A man wakes up to find his body has become one with the ghost ship. The reason he sold his soul was merely to exchange 10 years of freedom from the deep-sea Hades. After the two parties reached a deal, Davy Jones helped him salvage the ship that had once been sunk and endowed him with special abilities, making him the fastest ship in the Caribbean. But the price is that after the 10 years are up, Jack must either return to the ghost ship to serve for 100 years or hand over 100 souls to repay this debt. Jack, who always follows the pirate code, not only completely forgot about this matter but also renamed the maiden to the Black Pearl. He spent 2 full years riding the waves in the Caribbean Sea. Unexpectedly, in just 2 years, he suffered a rebellion led by his subordinate Barbossa and the sailors. He drove Jack off the Black Pearl and abandoned him on an uninhabited island to die. Barbossa used the Black Pearl to find the legendary treasure, the Aztec gold coins. From then on, Barbossa and his crew lived extravagantly and squandered everything. One of the old sailors believed that Barbossa's betrayal of Jack did not comply with the pirate code. In a fit of anger, Barbossa threw him into the bottom of the sea, but soon they discovered that these gold coins were cursed. All the pirates who spent the Aztec gold coins became walking corpses. As long as they stand in the moonlight, their true forms are revealed. Although they are immortal, they are also deprived of all senses and perceptions. Even drinking a bottle of red wine, they can't taste anything. They are nominally alive but no different from dead people. The only way to lift the curse is to find the 888 gold coins that were spent, drip the blood of the cursed person on them, and return them to their original place. Barbossa led his crew in looting for many years and finally found most of the gold back. However, the last gold coin sank into the bottom of the sea along with the old sailor. Until this day, a little boy appears floating in the mist on the Caribbean Sea, and it just so happens that a luxurious warship passes by. The governor's daughter Elizabeth stands at the bow, humming a pirate song. Although she comes from a noble background, she is full of endless fantasies about pirates. The sailor Gibbs hears the singing and hurries to stop her because according to ancient legends, women on ships will bring bad luck to everyone. But on this ship, Gibbs' words don't count. The commander Norrington proudly tells Elizabeth, he was born to kill pirates in this life. As long as pirates dare to come, he will treat them to 100 cannons. Elizabeth has just returned to the bow when she sees an unconscious child floating over on a plank. The sailors hurry to rescue the child onto the ship, but before they can check on the boy's condition, a merchant ship in the mist not far away bursts into raging flames. To destroy such a huge merchant ship, perhaps only pirates can do it. In order not to startle the snake in the grass, Norrington orders the sailors to speed up to ensure the safe escort of the governor to their destination, and Elizabeth takes on the responsibility of protecting the little boy.
My name's Elizabeth Swan.
Will Turner.
After brief introductions, the little boy falls unconscious again. At this moment, Elizabeth discovers a skull gold coin hanging on the boy's chest. This kind of gold coin symbolizes pirate identity. Once discovered by others, the little boy will be arrested immediately. To protect him, Elizabeth hurriedly hides the gold coin. When she comes to the bow to carefully observe this gold coin, she seems to vaguely see a black ghost ship silently leaving in the mist. Time flies, and the female protagonist Elizabeth has reached the age of marriage, but the gold coin left behind in childhood has always lingered in her mind, and she decides to carry this skull gold coin with her at all times. At this time, her father, who has been promoted to governor, suddenly sends her the most popular corset dress of the day. He hopes his daughter will put it on immediately and attend Lieutenant Norrington's promotion ceremony. It turns out that Lieutenant Norrington is in love with his daughter, and he seizes this opportunity to quickly promote this marriage. Elizabeth has no choice but to put on this suffocating corset dress. Before leaving, she meets Will, who comes to deliver a sword. He is the little boy who was rescued on the shore 8 years ago. Since being adopted by the old blacksmith, Will has become a blacksmith of some renown in the royal party. He and Elizabeth are childhood sweethearts, but unfortunately, their identities are vastly different. Will knows his identity is lowly and doesn't dare to have unrealistic fantasies. The scene changes to Jack, one of the 9 pirate lords, suddenly appearing at the royal port. It turns out that when he was thrown on an uninhabited island by Barbossa back then, he didn't die. Relying on the belief that where there's a ship, there's a way, he vowed to take back the Black Pearl from Barbossa. So he cut off his hair, tied it to the legs of 3 sea turtles, and left the desert island. But now, not only does he not have sailors following him, he doesn't even have a decent ship. So he came to the royal port with a very clear goal, preparing to steal the Dauntless, which the Navy calls the Master of the Sea. and then go find Barbassa to take back his black pearl. The customs guard sees the swaggering Jack and immediately stops him to demand a docking fee. But Jack's small boat has already sunk to the bottom of the water, so the guard can only have him register his identity information. He gave the guard 3 silver coins to avoid registration, but Jack never makes a losing deal. He turns around and takes the guard's purse. His purpose in coming to the Royal Island is to steal a ship that can travel far, so as to take back his own black pearl from Barbassa. But unexpectedly, there are 2 more guards here. They warn Jack with guns not to make any sudden moves. Jack has no choice but to tell the 2 about his tragic experience. But just then, a girl falls down and drops straight into the sea. Unexpectedly, the Royal Navy doesn't know how to swim. Jack can only take off his equipment and jump into the water to rescue the girl. However, as soon as the girl falls into the water, the gold coin on her neck bursts out an invisible force. The wind instantly rises on the land, and the guard's hat is almost blown off. The 3 pirate predecessors also start swaying with the wind. When Jack pulls up the girl, the clouds in the sky even turn into a giant hand, as if to grab the girl. It turns out that after the coronation ceremony, Norrington expressed his feelings to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth was suffocating from the tightness of the corset. Not only did she not hear Norrington's confession, she even fell into the sea from the city wall due to lack of oxygen, fortunately rescued by Jack, who was stealing a ship. And Jack discovers this pirate gold coin and is about to ask about the origin of the experience when he is subdued by Norrington. Norrington pulls back Jack's sleeve, sees the pirate brand on his arm, and immediately orders his arrest, preparing to send him to the gallows. At the critical moment, Jack takes Elizabeth hostage and at the same time demands the return of his portable equipment. Jack has Elizabeth put the equipment on him, taking the opportunity to discuss Norrington. Then he forcefully pushes Elizabeth towards the crowd, turns around to grab the cable, and once again performs an impressive operation. Just like that, Jack successfully escapes capture. He then quietly comes to the blacksmith shop, wanting to open the shackles on his hands. Unexpectedly, the blacksmith is already dead drunk. Jack can only do it himself, but no matter how he smashes the sturdy chains, they won't break. Suddenly, he sees a large donkey-powered machine, so he picks up the red-hot branding iron and gently burns it on the donkey's buttocks. Driven by the donkey, Jack uses the rotating gears to open the shackles on his hands, but just as he is about to leave, Will rushes back to the blacksmith shop. Jack hurriedly hides. Looking at the messy blacksmith shop, Will knows someone has broken in. He first calms the frightened donkey, then shifts his gaze to the extra hat. As he is about to touch the hat, Jack appears with a sword. Will knows he is the person the Royal Navy is currently chasing and immediately decides to contribute to justice. The 2 then become entangled in a fight, but as the weapons continue to clash, Jack realizes that Will's swordsmanship is very strong. So he draws the gun at his waist. As they say, beyond 7 paces, the gun is fast. Within 7 paces, the gun is both fast and accurate. Unexpectedly, the sound of fighting wakes up the blacksmith, who is sound asleep. Jack is knocked unconscious by a bottle. Upon hearing the commotion, the Navy arrives in time and locks Jack in a dark and damp cell, while the other prisoners are persistently enticing the dog holding the keys. The legendary Black Pearl has quietly approached the royal port. Following a cannon shot exploding in the port, Barbassa leads the Pirate Legion to launch a rapid attack on the port when no one is on guard. The purpose of this trip is precisely the pirate gold coin held by Elizabeth. One team, relying on their immortal bodies, wantonly slaughters in the city and attracts the firepower of the guards. Will hears the commotion and immediately joins the battle. He forcefully throws a flying axe, directly taking out a demolition expert, then retrieves the axe and continues to defend the royal port. The second team's goal is to take back the pirate gold coin held by Elizabeth. They directly break open the door of Elizabeth's house. Elizabeth, seeing the pirates coming aggressively, quickly runs upstairs to hide, but the pirates can sense the guidance of the gold coin. No matter where Elizabeth hides,
Hello, puppy.
According to the pirate code, anyone captured has the right to see the captain. Before seeing the captain, pirates cannot harm the captive. Pirates must act according to the code, so they can only escort Elizabeth to see Captain Barbassa. Will happens to see this scene and is about to go forward to rescue her, but is blocked by the demolition expert who was killed with one blow earlier. Before he discovers that the pirates are immortal, he is knocked unconscious by a pirate behind him with a club, and Jack can only watch the battle outside from the cell. Unexpectedly, a cannon shot comes and breaks the wall of the adjacent cell, not off target at all. Watching the inmates in the adjacent cell escape one by one, he himself cannot leave. He can only pick up the bones on the ground to attract the key-holding dog, just as it looks like he's about to succeed. Suddenly the sound of fighting scares the dog away. It turns out to be Jack's former subordinates. They mock him for being an unlucky captain. Seeing the eerie white bones walking under the moonlight, Jack understands that Barbassa has been cursed. At this time, the moon hides behind the clouds. Elizabeth is also brought to the Black Pearl by the pirates to meet Barbassa, and as soon as she boards the ship, she gets slapped.
You speak when spoken to.
The cunning and treacherous Barbassa, wearing the coat of a gentleman, asks Elizabeth what her request is. Elizabeth demands that the pirates all leave, but Barbassa refuses her. But Elizabeth knows the pirates have come for the gold coin, so she turns around and drops the gold coin on the sea surface. She threatens Barbassa that if he doesn't agree, she will throw the gold coin into the sea. Barbassa of course understands the importance of the gold coin, but he still pretends to be calm and acts like the gold coin is not important.
Well, I suppose if it is worthless, then there's no point in me keeping it.
Barbassa sees that the girl is resourceful, so he steps forward and asks her name. Elizabeth, not wanting to expose her identity as the governor's daughter, lies and says her name is Elizabeth Turner. Upon hearing the surname Turner, Barbassa and the pirates all become extremely excited. The pirates are excited because this surname belongs to the old sailor Bill Turner, who was knocked into the water, and is also the holder of the last gold coin. Since the girl is Bill Turner's descendant, her bloodline can lift the curse. Barbassa promises Elizabeth that once he gets the gold coin, he will immediately leave the royal port. However, after getting the gold coin, Barbassa reveals his true colors. Barbassa states that the agreement of the first code does not include sending her ashore. Secondly, Elizabeth is not a pirate, so the code is invalid. And thirdly, the code is not necessarily to be followed. This monkey takes a piece of cursed pirate gold, then turns into a skeletal monster under the moonlight. Since Barbassa obtained the pirate gold coins and squandered them, the terrible curse has fallen upon each of them. They have to bear this pain forever, and the only way to lift the curse is to recollect the scattered gold coins and offer the blood of the user. The last gold coin is in Elizabeth's hands, which is why Barbassa hasn't killed her yet. She can only hide in the corner of the Black Pearl, shivering, fantasizing that a hero will come to save her. The next day, Will wakes up from unconsciousness. Upon learning that Elizabeth has been taken by pirates, he immediately finds Norrington to request sending troops to rescue Elizabeth. But Norrington doesn't have the pirate's route. A guard on the side interjects that Jack is also a pirate, so maybe he knows the whereabouts of the Black Pearl. But Norrington believes that the pirates didn't rescue Jack last night, proving that they are not in league with each other. Will, unwilling to give up, comes to Jack's cell with a glimmer of hope. Jack states that he and Barbassa are old acquaintances, but he is trapped in the cell and unable to help Will. Will says that he designed the entire cell himself, and using the lever principle, he can break the cell door. During the conversation, Jack learns that Will's father is named Bill Turner and decides to help Will, because he wants to use Will to take back the Black Pearl. The two quietly come to the pier, planning to steal the Dauntless warship to pursue Barbassa. They avoid the patrol of the guards, lift a small boat, and walk into the sea, using the weight of the small boat to approach the Dauntless. Then they climb up by grabbing the ropes on the gunnel, and finally successfully drive the Navy off the Dauntless with the guns in their hands. Seeing this through the telescope, Norrington immediately orders the Interceptor to pursue at full speed. But just as the Navy of the Interceptor is about to board the Dauntless using grappling hooks, they didn't expect this to be Jack's ploy to lure the Tiger away from the mountain. While the Navy is all boarding the Dauntless, they cut the ropes between the two ships and directly sail away with the Interceptor, whose speed is second only to the Black Pearl. By the time Norrington reacts, the Interceptor is already several hundred meters away. He can only watch helplessly as Jack leaves. After escaping the pursuit, the two decide to go to Tortuga Island first to recruit a few crew members. Tortuga Island is the haven of all pirates. Filled with joy and enthusiasm, Jack finds Gibbs, who was dismissed by the Royal Navy for alcoholism, in the pigsty and wants to recruit him as his first mate. Learning that Jack is going to do a big job on Dead Man's Island, Gibbs immediately accepts Jack's recruitment. Then they post a job advertisement on Tortuga Island. Hearing that the reward is to split all the treasure on Dead Man's Island, many brave souls immediately come to apply for the job. Then everyone sets off on the journey, but the process is not smooth. There are storms for several days in a row. Thanks to Jack's nautical compass, they have the right direction. The compass can point out the location of what the holder wants at any time. What Jack wants most at this time is undoubtedly the Black Pearl. Before long, they arrive at Dead Man's Island by following the direction indicated by the compass. The Black Pearl has already arrived in advance. Jack will row a small boat into Dead Man's Island, which is full of treasure. Looking down, the bottom of the water is also full of glittering treasure. At the same time, Barbossa has already brought Elizabeth to the Aztec treasure. Under the gaze of all the pirates, Barbossa opens the Aztec treasure that cursed them. As long as Elizabeth's bloodline breaks the curse, they can become normal people. Will, worried about Elizabeth's safety, wants to save her like a hero, but is stopped by Jack. Jack says that now is not the time, but Will knows that Jack wants to use him to take back the Black Pearl, so he takes the opportunity to knock him out with an oar. At this time, the sacrifice ceremony has already begun. Under the gaze of all the pirates, Barbossa presses Elizabeth on the stone coffin, ready to start the ceremony. He takes the gold coin from Elizabeth's bosom and then uses a knife to cut Elizabeth's palm. As the gold coin with Elizabeth's blood falls into the stone coffin, all the pirates close their eyes and wait for the curse to be lifted. But after a while, they still don't feel any change. As Barbossa's gun goes off, everyone realizes that the curse still exists. Barbossa looks at the knife in his hand in puzzlement and instantly understands that Elizabeth is not Bill Turner's child. He angrily raises his hand and slaps Elizabeth in the face, knocking her out. At this time, all the pirates begin to blame Barbossa, blaming him for tying Bill to a cannon and sinking him into the sea back then, which makes lifting the curse so difficult. The more the pirates talk, the angrier they get, and they immediately want to remove Barbossa from the position of captain. While they are making a fuss, Will appears silently beside Elizabeth, not only rescuing her but also taking one of the gold coins. But Barbossa's pet monkey sees this and makes a sound, and Barbossa realizes that Elizabeth has been rescued. Learning that the gold coin has disappeared again, the pirates unite and begin to search, but they soon discover that all the oars have also disappeared. At this time, the knocked out Jack just wakes up and happens to run into the pirates face to face. Faced with the pirates' encirclement, Jack can only use the power of the code to negotiate with Barbossa. Barbossa is very annoyed to see that Jack hasn't been buried on the desert island. He immediately decides to uproot the problem this time. At the command, all the guns are aimed at Jack, but Jack is extremely calm because he knows who Bill Turner's real child is. Faced with the curse on him, Barbossa has no choice but to agree to make a deal with Jack. On the other side, Elizabeth will board the interceptor. According to the code, the crew can leave the captured Jack behind and depart on their own. The first mate Gibbs has no choice but to order the sails to be raised and set sail. In the cargo hold, Elizabeth learns that Will is determined to rescue her and is very moved. Just as she is about to elevate her relationship with Will, the Black Pearl, the fastest ship, catches up with them. Gibbs immediately orders to throw away heavy objects to speed up the escape, while Barbossa understands his intention and orders to extend the cannons and raise the sails to increase the speed. Gibbs becomes even more afraid and directly throws the ship's weapons and ammunition into the sea. At this time, the Black Pearl, with its oars extended, reaches its peak speed. Seeing the distance between the two ships getting closer and closer, everyone knows that they cannot escape by speed alone. The only option now is to fight Barbossa to the death. But due to a misjudgment, all the ammunition has been thrown away. They can only use knives, forks, glass shards, and nails as ammunition. Then Gibbs orders to drop the anchor from the right side. As the anchor falls into the sea and catches on a reef, the interceptor directly makes a big turn under the pull of the anchor. This catches Barbossa off guard. In order not to let the interceptor slip away, he can only order a sharp left turn to pass by the interceptor. The two ships face each other across the sea, and the captains give orders without hesitation. The interceptor, because it doesn't have real ammunition, makes their attack on the Black Pearl negligible. While the Black Pearl uses real guns and ammunition, each attack can cause high damage. Jack, who is locked in the cabin, has been observing the battle. Suddenly, a cannonball blasts a hole in the hull. Luckily, he finds Gibbs' flask and discovers that the lock on the brig door has been blown off by the cannonball, allowing him to escape from the Black Pearl's brig. Seeing the battle getting more and more intense, He wants to hand over Elizabeth in exchange for the lives of the other crew members. Elizabeth only then realizes that the gold coin is left in the cabin. Will, knowing the importance of the gold coin, hurries back to the cabin to find it. At this moment, the enemy fires a chain shot. Will happens to be blown away. Not only does he not find the gold coin, but he is also unable to escape because the exit is blocked. The interceptor's mast is also cut in half by the chain shot. Barbossa sees that the timing is ripe and orders the pirates to board the interceptor for close combat. His monkey also joins the battle. At the critical moment, Jack grabs a rope and returns to the interceptor. Seeing Jack return safely, everyone seems to be fired up again. At this time, Barbossa's monkey sneaks into the cabin and takes the pirate gold coin first. Jack notices and hurries to chase after it, but he is still too slow. Retrieving the gold coin that can break the curse makes the pirates cheer excitedly, but everyone becomes Barbossa's prisoner. Then they light the powder magazine, instantly blowing the interceptor into pieces. Just when everyone thinks Will has perished in the fire, Will miraculously climbs onto the Black Pearl. It turns out that before the interceptor exploded, he escaped through a crack in the bottom of the ship. He threatens Barbossa to release Elizabeth, or else he will shoot himself in the head, because Will has Bill Turner's blood flowing in him. Barbossa knows that this is the only key to lifting the curse, so he naturally agrees to Will's request, but Will only demands that Barbossa release Elizabeth, without specifying the time and place. So Barbossa takes Elizabeth to the desert island where Jack was once exiled.
Don't dare impugn me honor, boy. I agreed she'd go free, but it was you who failed to specify when or where.
He takes back the dress before Elizabeth jumps into the water. Barbossa says the clothes still have warmth, but in fact, he feels nothing because the curse has not been lifted at this time, saying this is just to comfort the pirates that victory is near. Then they start to deal with Jack. Barbossa wants to know if Jack can create a miracle again, so he throws him a gun with only one bullet and lets Jack decide who is relieved first. The two swim to the island. Elizabeth hears that Jack escaped the island last time by tying his hair to sea turtles and wants him to use the same trick to go rescue Will. Under Elizabeth's questioning, Jack finally tells the truth. It turns out that the island is a storage point for merchants. Last time, he happened to meet a merchant team coming to pick up goods, so he was rescued. Knowing the truth, Elizabeth is extremely angry, while Jack is ready to have a good drink. She looks at the rum Jack hands her and suddenly comes up with a brilliant plan. At night, Elizabeth deliberately accompanies Jack to have fun and keeps urging him to drink a few more cups, getting him dead drunk. When Jack is awakened by the pungent smoke the next day, he finds that Elizabeth has burned all the goods. It turns out that she wants to send a signal through the thick smoke to let her governor father and Lieutenant Norrington come to rescue her. Although Jack is very angry, this is indeed the only way at the moment. Sure enough, before long, the Royal Dauntless discovers them. After the two are rescued, Elizabeth immediately asks her father and Norrington to save Will, but her father and Norrington don't want to risk their lives for a blacksmith. Jack takes the opportunity to say that the Black Pearl has just experienced a fierce battle and is now very fragile. As long as troops are sent to defeat Barbossa, they can make a great contribution, but Norrington still remains unmoved. Elizabeth, eager to save Will, has no choice but to offer herself. She promises that as long as Will is saved, she will marry Norrington. Norrington has admired Elizabeth for a long time and immediately decides to go save Will. Then they have Jack lead the way and arrive at Dead Man's Island. Norrington sees the dangerous terrain and worries about pirates ambushing them. Jack takes the opportunity to say that he can go in first to lure out the pirates, letting the Navy wait at the entrance to catch them. Norrington agrees to Jack's suggestion, not realizing that this is Jack's plan to use others to kill. At this very moment, Will has been brought before the stone coffin by Barbossa in preparation for the sacrifice, while Jack takes advantage of the chaos to approach the coffin. Much to his surprise, Barbossa sees Jack again, for no one can escape a desert island in a day. But for now, it's more important to lift the curse. They can kill Will later. Barbossa rolls his eyes, urging Jack to get his point across quickly, and Jack informs the crowd that the Royal Navy is lurking outside. If the pirates regain their physical bodies and go outside, they would be ambushed and annihilated by the waiting Navy. The pirates should first use the skeleton mode to counterattack the Navy, which would grant Barbossa 2 ships, while he, himself, would sail the Black Pearl as a big distraction for Barbossa. Jack picks up a handful of pirate gold coins while presenting this plan. Jack offers a third of the looted supplies to Barbossa and then tosses the gold coins back into the coffin one by one. At this moment, Will notices Jack's diverting gestures and quietly steals a gold coin. Barbossa, however, remains oblivious and agrees with Jack's proposition. What Jack didn't expect was that the pirates didn't attack head-on but launched a surprise attack from the seafloor. As the moonlight suddenly illuminates the entire sea, the pirates transform into skeletons in the moonlight and climb up the Royal Fearless through the anchor ropes. Without the weight of flesh and blood, they silently board the Fearless. The Navy, taken by surprise, is forced into battle, but in the face of the immortal pirates, the mortal Navy is frail and quickly defeated. Fortunately, a guard is willing to sacrifice himself when warned of danger, and only then does Norrington notice the danger of the Fearless, thus ordering an immediate fallback. However, the pirates light the Fearless cannons and attack, firing a rain of bullets that makes Norrington feel as if he is 1,000 miles away from his ship. After paying a hefty price, he finally returns to his ship. But even so, their prospects against the immortal pirates are still bleak, because even if the pirates' eyeballs are shot out, they don't have to go to the hospital. Terrified by the scene, the governor rushes back to protect his daughter, but to his surprise, Elizabeth has already escaped to the sea using bed sheets. She boards a small boat on her own and goes to the Cavern of Death to rescue Will, leaving the governor alone in the cabin. Suddenly, several skeletal water arms reach in to snatch the governor's wig, and astonishingly the governor starts a tough struggle, but he is not as strong as the skeletons. The only thing he could do is pick up a hammer and smash the arms. However, the arms can still move. The governor can only use the hammer to hit the arm continually. Thinking that he had resolved the issue, he did not expect the arm to remain indestructible. The governor had no choice but to put the arm in the drawer. Listening to the sound outside, Jack knew the two armies had already fought fiercely. It was time for a desperate counterattack. He draws his sword and throws it to Will. Before Barbossa can react, Jack stabs him. Will swiftly lets the explosive ghost cut the rope on his hand, and then a few people start fighting in the Cavern of Death. But Barbossa's swordsmanship is superior to Jack's, and he has the upper hand after several continuous attacks. He forcefully kicks and knocks Jack to the ground, throwing away his sword, indicating Jack stands no chance. Jack seizes the opportunity to stand up and stabs Barbossa's belly with his sword, but this does no damage. Barbossa pulls out his sword and stabs Jack in return, but in the moonlight, Jack also turns into a skeleton. It turns out that because he had stolen a gold coin earlier, Jack has become immortal. At this point, neither side can kill the other, and the clashing of swords tells a tale of past grudges, and the cold swords are filled with killing intent. They fight tirelessly under the moonlight. Meanwhile, Will, due to exhaustion, is knocked down by the explosive ghost. Just as the explosive ghost is about to finish him off, Elizabeth arrives just in time to save Will with a stick. Together they defend themselves with iron poles, making a skewer out of the pirates. Will lights a bomb and shoves it into the pirate's body, leading to an explosion which interrupts the duel between Barbossa and Jack. Upon noticing the situation, Jack promptly cuts his palm and throws the blood-stained coin to Will. At the same time, Barbossa pulls out his pistol and points it at Elizabeth. Barbossa scoffs at Jack for wasting bullets, and then Will speaks up to contradict him. Only then does Barbossa notice that Will has cut his hand and tossed the bloodied coin into the coffin. The curse of the gold coins is instantly lifted. Barbossa senses trouble, but it is too late. His chest is already bleeding profusely. As his body slowly collapses to the ground, the apple slips from his fingers. Barbossa never gets to taste the apple. The pirates outside feel the pain and all drop their weapons. In the governor's room, the arm in the drawer starts to rot. He steps out to celebrate the victory. Even though Jack has merits in killing the enemy, his previous crimes can't be washed away, and he is greeted by the ruthless gallows. Just when the executioner is reading out Jack's crimes, a parrot appears before everyone. Will knows that Jack's large flag, Gibbs, has come to the rescue. He rushes forward to save Jack using some equipment. After all, his father was once Jack's colleague and he still needs Jack to find his father's whereabouts. But in the end, they are surrounded by the royal guard. Seeing Will's loyalty and love, Elizabeth can't help but express her love. She also pleads with Norrington to let them be. Only then does Norrington realize that Elizabeth does not love him. Even though it feels like a knife is twisting in his heart, he eventually agrees to Elizabeth's request. Jack seizes the moment to jump off the city wall into the sea, and shortly after, the Black Pearl appears not too far away. He grabs the rope thrown down by the crew and boards the Black Pearl. 8 years later, Jack becomes the captain of the Black Pearl again, and a new journey begins. Watching the Black Pearl disappear into the distance, Norrington feels dejected. He tells Will to take care of Elizabeth and leaves with the guard. Will finally gets to be with Elizabeth. Next, Jack has to find the dead man's chest to get rid of his 10-year contract with Davy Jones. Davy Jones is known as the Lord of the Deep Sea. He was once a brave sailor who fell in love with the sea goddess, Calypso. He volunteered to be the captain of the Dutchman, guiding spirits across the sea on behalf of the goddess. The price was that he could only come ashore once every 10 years. When Jones returned after 10 years, he discovered that the goddess had not kept their appointment, believing he was betrayed. Jones joined the 9 pirate lords to seal the sea goddess and a girl as an act of vengeance. Despite this, he still loved the goddess deep down. Every time he looked at the peach-shaped music box given to him by the goddess, he wept with grief. To avoid further anguish, Jones carved out his heart, which loved the goddess, locked it in the dead man's chest, and buried it on the agreed meeting island. Jones no longer guided the spirits for the goddess after that. The dreadful curse transformed him into a hideous monster. His crew also transformed into ghastly sea ghosts. The crew then murdered passerby on the sea. Those facing death had only 2 options: to accept death's judgment or to serve on Jones' ship for 100 years until they became part of the ship. This resulted in Jones being known as the Lord of the Deep Sea, ruling the vast oceans, until one day, Jack approached Jones. He sold his soul to Jones, agreeing to merge with Jones' ship in return for 13 years of freedom. Davy Jones accepted and resurfaced Jack's bewitched ship from the depths of the sea, renaming it the Black Pearl. The cost was that after 13 years, Jack's soul would belong to Jones, and he would have to serve 100 years on the Dutchman, until a sudden visitor arrived. Jack looked back and saw Bill Turner, who had been tied to a cannon and sunk to the sea. After being discovered by Jones in the depths, Bill sold his soul and had been serving on Jones' ship for 10 years. A sea snail climbed onto the water bucket, and Bill grabbed it and slowly put it into his mouth and chewed. He then told Jack he had come to deliver a message on Jones' orders. The agreed upon time had come, and Jack must serve as agreed on the Dutchman. After delivering these words, he handed something over to Jack and then left. What he saw made Jack's face turn pale. A dark spot was spreading rapidly on his palm. That's because Davy Jones had a gigantic sea monster that specifically captured people marked with a black spot. Those who were caught would be thrown into the yawning abyss, and even whole ships would be dragged into the depths of the sea. Jack woke up the sleeping crew members urgently and commanded them to leave the sea at full speed towards the land. Even when his prankster monkey stole his captain's hat and threw it into the sea, he disregarded it. After dawn, 2 sailors found Jack's captain hat and happily put it on their heads. But little did they know, the giant monster was looking for Jack. And then they, along with the ship, were dragged into the deep sea. Elsewhere, Beckett got wind of these events and wanted to obtain that heart. By doing so, he could control Jones and rule the seas. So, he arrested Will and Elizabeth on their wedding day, under the pretense that Will was breaking the law. Beckett informed Will that if he wanted to be pardoned, he would have to bring back Jack's compass, because the compass would point to what the holder most desired, and with it, he could find the location of the heart. To save Elizabeth, who was locked in a prison cell, Will had no choice but to agree. After bidding Elizabeth farewell, he set off to find Jack, but the governor didn't think highly of his son-in-law, not because he was of low status, but because he believed that his daughter's freedom should not be put in someone else's hands. So he bribed the guard privately, intending to send his daughter to England, but the guard betrayed him. Beckett's men killed the man sent to pick him up, but fortunately, Elizabeth was smart and resourceful. Having already escaped, she quietly went into Beckett's office and took the pass. Beckett, impressed by Elizabeth's courage and wisdom, decided to make a deal with her as well. If Elizabeth could bring back Jack's compass, he would release her father. Thus, both Elizabeth and Will were pushed by Beckett to carry out the task of retrieving the compass. Will arrived at Turtle Island ahead of time to inquire about Jack's whereabouts. He learned from a merchant that the Black Pearl was docked on an island, but when Will found the Black Pearl, the ship was empty. The densely forested island only had Gibbs's wine bottle. Strangely, a rope was tied to the wine bottle. He followed the rope to its end but found nothing. Suddenly, a group of savages rushed out from all directions, blowing sleeping darts that made Will faint on the spot. He was then carried away by the savages like a pig and locked in a cage suspended in the air. Gibbs informed Will that the savages consumed the flesh of every chieftain and made cages from their leftover bones. At this time, the savages' sacrificial ceremony had already begun. They spiced Jack with toenails and prepared to roast him over bonfire. Jack pointed out that as a divine being, the fire should be larger. The savages immediately added more firewood. Jack seized the opportunity to run away. He planned to escape through any pathway, only to find that tribe was set in a dangerous cliffside terrain. He could only rush into a hut, pick up a rope and try to climb down the cliff. As soon as he stepped out of the door, however, he encountered the pursuing savages. This time, the savages didn't give him a chance and directly tied him up. Meanwhile, the trapped crew had thought of a way to escape. They used inertia to sway the cage greatly, trying to grab the vines on the cliff to escape. The crew swung in the canyon like a pendulum, time after time. Finally, after relentless efforts, they grabbed the vines on the cliff and started to climb up desperately. Just then, a guard crossed the sky bridge, and Will immediately told everyone to stop and not make any noise. But a few other crew members didn't listen and continued to climb. When they thought they had been clever, they grabbed a small flower snake. Several people were frightened and let go of the vine in their hands, causing the cage to fall directly off the cliff. The immense gravitational acceleration snapped the rope, letting them fall into the unfathomable canyon. The survivors had to climb up quickly, but this was seen by the guard. The guard ran back to the tribe and informed the savages who were holding the ceremony. Upon hearing this, the savages immediately dropped their torches and rushed to capture the escaped crew. Jack thought he had escaped a dangerous situation, but a few sparks flew from the torch, instantly igniting the entire pile of firewood. Jack could only swing the bamboo pole up and down, finally leaving the fire pit before getting roasted. He untied the rope around his feet to escape, but he didn't get far before he was blocked by two women. Gathering his courage, Jack ran forward with all his might, only for his bamboo to get stuck in a stack of coconuts. Jack had a sudden idea. He hoisted the coconuts and swung them at the women, which completely angered them. They picked up various fruits and threw them at Jack, quickly filling his bamboo with fruits. Due to the heavy bamboo, Jack was off balance and stumbled forward. Although he was lucky enough to make it to the other side, the sliding fruits made it impossible for Jack to maintain his balance, and he ended up falling off the cliff. Yet, he survived thanks to his strong will and the bamboo didn't fall on his head. Meanwhile, as Will and the others reached the top of the cliff, they were met with a slope. They rolled into a small river with the round cage. Although they were dizzy, they managed to escape. Just as Gibbs was ordering to cast off, Jack was seen running from a distance. Everyone was elated to see Jack, but to their surprise, the entire tribe of savages was following him. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly hoisted the black sail. Jack also boarded the Black Pearl at a crucial moment. After escaping the danger, Will told Jack he needed the compass to save Elizabeth. Jack, knowing love can make a man risk everything, told Will the compass could only be exchanged with the key in Jones's chest. Without a second thought, Will agreed, not knowing this was the key to the dead man's chest. Then everyone went to the cabin in the forest, hoping for the witch to divine the location of the key. For this, Jack even brought a gift.
An undead monkey.
Tia Dalma accepted the gift and promptly opened the cage. A small monkey immediately ran to a lying figure not far away and wailed. Jack also noticed a familiar hat. The owner of the hat was Barbassa, who Jack had killed. When Will asked Dalma about the location of the key, she gravely told everyone the key was to the dead man's chest. Whoever got the heart in the chest could control Davy Jones and even master the ocean. As long as they boarded the perilous Dutchman, they would know the location of the key. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, Dalma used her crab to divine the exact location of the Dutchman. They found a damaged ship stranded on a reef, and Will, eager to save people, immediately boarded a small boat to search for the key. But when he boarded the ship, he found a sailor repeatedly saying there were monsters in the water, and there were noises behind him. He saw a man screaming on the ground. Will quickly went up to help him. Just then, a ghost ship came crashing through the waves, obviously the real Flying Dutchman. Then the sea ghosts appeared from the darkness, like devils from hell, swinging their meteor hammers at Will. They outnumbered him, but Will didn't yield. He thrust his short sword into an oil barrel, then slashed the oil lamp, and used the burning sword to knock a sea ghost's dinner onto the deck. The fishy smell made him feel nauseous. The sea ghost seized the opportunity to ambush him, tipping him over. Then the sound of a crab's leg echoed, and a foul smell hit his face. The crab arm directly indicates that he is not a human. Faced with these ghosts, Davy Jones only gave them two choices. The first was to be killed with a single stroke and thrown into the sea, becoming a lost soul forever. The second was to become Jones's crew, serving for 100 years on the ship until their bodies became one with the ship. When it was Will's turn to choose, he thought of what Jack had told him. At this moment, Jack was using a telescope to observe every move on the ship, but the next second, he appeared in front of Will demanding repayment. Jack argued that he had only been a captain for 2 years before he was betrayed by Barbassa and the crew, and was forced to leave the Black Pearl. By his calculations, He should still have 11 years. Jones interrupted him immediately. Because Jack had claimed the title of captain all these years, he was left with no choice but to say that Will was willing to serve in his stead. It turned out that Jack had long decided to betray Will. Either Will finds the key to the dead man's chest, or he takes his place and serves for 100 years. Davy Jones said that one soul was far from enough. When Jack heard there was room for negotiation, he asked how many souls he would need to be set free. As long as Jack brought back 100 souls in 3 days, the debt would be forgiven. Will had to stay for the time being as a hostage. After their negotiation, Jones's tentacle burrowed into Jack's hand and temporarily removed the black spot marking him. Then he left with the Sea Ghost crew. Time was precious, so Jack rushed off to find 100 souls to rescue himself, while Davy Jones returned to the Flying Dutchman. In the piano room, he played Chopin's Nocturne with his beard to remember his lost love. Meanwhile, the crew on the deck were working in the heavy rain, hoisting the cannons for maintenance. Mr. Gibbs was ordering Bill Turner around, but since Will has the same surname, he dropped his tasks to secure the mast instead. A bolt of lightning illuminated the deck, and Bill recognized his own son. He couldn't accept that Will was also serving on the ship and absent-mindedly let go of the rope he was holding. This resulted in a cannon falling from mid-air, which angered Mr. Gibbs greatly. He ordered his men to pin Will to the mast, and raised his long whip to punish him. Bill quickly stepped forward to stop Mr. Gibbs, saying he would take the punishment on Will's behalf. Hearing the commotion, Davy Jones came out to see what was happening. He asked Bill why he wanted to help Will. Bill could only tell Jones that Will was his own son. Given the deep bond between father and son, Davy Jones allowed Bill to administer the punishment himself. But when it came to striking his own son, Bill just couldn't do it. Jones felt disrespected and angrily ordered Mr. Gibbs to whip Will. Knowing that Mr. Gibbs would strike harder, Bill could only grab the whip and strike Will lightly himself. Even if the action was light, the heavy whip still felt painful when it hit the body. This brought tears to Bill's eyes. By the time the 5 lashes were dealt, Will was already battered and bruised. Bill helplessly explained to Will, "I'm doing this for your own good." Then he told Will that selling a soul has only one outcome: rejoining the vessel. But Will didn't sell a soul. He was tricked by Jack to come aboard in search of this key. Hearing the word key, the old man who had integrated himself with the ship opened his eyes. He strained his body out of the hull and told Will that this was the key to the dead man's chest. But when Will asked where the key was, the old man didn't dare to answer and burrowed back into the ship's hull. At this time, a game was taking place on deck. The crew could ask anyone to compare with them using their service years as a bet. Will thought for a while, and decided to bet against Davy Jones. The soul-selling betting game thereby began. If he lost, he would serve Davy Jones forever on the ship. But if he won, he could get the key that Davy Jones was hiding under his beard to save his beloved, Elizabeth. However, as the dice landed, Will's father also joined the game. He feared his son would lose and staked his own soul. But with Davy Jones's superb techniques, he ultimately won the game. Thanks to his father's protection, Will neither won nor lost in the game, while Bill was destined to serve on the ship forever. However, the important thing wasn't the outcome of the game, but that Will now knew where the key was hidden. When everyone was asleep, Bill lied that the captain asked for a change in guard duty, which fooled the guards and gave Will the opportunity to steal the key. Will picked up 2 pens from the table, lifting Davy Jones's beard. Then he slipped a piece of paper with a drawing of the key under the beard, replacing the key to the dead man's chest. After succeeding, Bill gave Will a small knife to remember him and warned him not to go to sea again. He was sure he would die on the Dutchman, and he didn't want Will to have the same fate. Swearing on the knife, Will vowed he would never abandon his father. He would save him from the Dutchman. At this moment, Bill's eyes were moist. Whether his son could save him was no longer important. His filial piety was enough. The next day, Will, who was in a lifeboat, was saved by a passing merchant ship. But before he could finish his hot tea, a crew member frantically reported that a flagless ship was rapidly approaching them. Without a doubt, Davy Jones had caught up. He used his pincers to grip Bill's head, forcing him to watch as Will was buried at sea. Then he ordered his subordinates to summon the Norwegian sea monster, Kraken. A wave of sound was sent into the ocean, causing the merchant ship where Will was to shake violently. The surrounding seawater also began to boil. Before the captain could react, a 100-meter-long tentacle dragged him into the sea. The crew only realized the danger when it arrived, but they were already fish on a chopping board. Several tentacles climbed onto the ship and began to attack the innocent crew. Despite their desperate resistance, cold weapons were of no use against the giant tentacle. Kraken extended its tentacles out of the water. It seemed like a giant claw attacking their fragile toy ship, which was quickly split in two. As the mast fell, Will decisively jumped into the sea. while Kraken continued to toy with the merchant ship in the water. Will quickly swam to the surface and clambered onto a floating piece of debris, but before he could catch his breath, the Flying Dutchman approached, and he had no choice but to submerge and hide. The other crew members were either ordered by Jones to be killed or were wrapped by the Kraken and flung into the abyss. Although Jones didn't see Will, he knew this was all Jack's conspiracy. He immediately ordered the dead man's chest to be moved swiftly to Isla Crucis. Will, on the other hand, quietly climbed up to the ship's bow aiming to go along. The night before, Elizabeth manipulated a dress to create an illusion on the cargo ship. Then she made the dress float back and forth on the ship, intentionally knocking over an oil lamp. The oil lamp ignited the prepared fuel, guiding everyone to the pirate haven of Tortuga. Meanwhile, Jack and Mr. Gibbs had already arrived at Tortuga to recruit 100 souls for Jones within 3 days. They welcomed anyone, regardless of whether they were old, weak, sick, or disabled. These poor people didn't know what kind of tragedy was awaiting them. Suddenly a deep voice sounded. It was Commodore Norrington, who had been missing for a long time. Having been discharged from the Navy for letting Jack evade capture and left with nothing, he immediately overturned the table. Jack tried to leave, covering his face with a leaf, but was stopped by Norrington, who drew his gun. Seeing this, 2 of Jack's crew members stepped forward, resulting in Norrington shooting the chandelier in the ensuing chaos. The chandelier part shattered a drunk's bottle, causing a scene of total chaos. All the drunken men indiscriminately punched strangers, while Jack used the opportunity to escape the scene. Eventually, all the drunks threw Norrington into a pigsty, and he was spotted by Elizabeth, who had just arrived at Tortuga. Then Elizabeth brought Norrington to Jack and asked about Will's whereabouts. Of course, Jack couldn't expose his deeds and lied that Will was captured by Davy Jones. He suddenly thought of a better idea, tricking Elizabeth into believing that if they could find the dead man's chest, they could control Davy Jones and save Will. He instructed Elizabeth to hold the compass, constantly thinking about the dead man's chest. The compass in her hand clearly pointed in a direction, and Jack immediately abandoned the plan to find 100 souls, deciding to exploit Jones's weakness instead. After a night of sailing, they arrived at the destination where the dead man's chest was buried. Elizabeth, guided by the compass, found the location of the dead man's chest. Jack let Norrington be in charge of the digging while he rested with his eyes closed. At this time, Jones also arrived. Seeing that Jack and his crew had already started digging, he immediately ordered the Dutchman to dive quickly, planning to have the sea ghosts claim the chest back. The sound of monstrous waves alerted 2 sentry pirates, who rushed to notify Jack and the others. At that moment, Norrington unearthed the dead man's chest, and the 3 of them couldn't wait to lift it out. They could hear a thudding heartbeat from within the chest. At that moment, Will, who had been hiding on the Dutchman, climbed onto the islet. Disregarding settling scores with Jack, he decided right away to stab the heart and free his father, but Jack disagreed. As no one but Jones could control the Kraken sea monster, he intended to negotiate freedom with Jones using the heart. Of course, Will wasn't going to hand over the key, as this was the only way to save his father. As the situation became tenser, Norrington also drew his sword, as the heart could restore his noble status. Driven by their individual interests, the 3 quickly came to blows. Seeing the 3 of them busy fighting, the 2 pirates decided to steal the dead man's chest. Seeing this, Elizabeth hurried to pursue them. Meanwhile, Jones's sea ghosts had already reached shore. Finding the chest gone, they immediately went in search of it. Just as Elizabeth stopped the pirates to reclaim the dead man's chest, an axe flew towards a tree nearby. The 3 turned back to see that the sea ghosts had already killed their way over, and they had to pick up the chest and run. Unexpectedly, they were stopped by a tree in their path and, observing the chest on the ground, the 3 decided to draw their swords and fight. However, a sea ghost at the back picked up the chest and planned to find Jones for a reward. At this same time, the other 3 were fighting it out over the key that could open the dead man's chest, battling from the beach to an abandoned water wheel. In a critical moment, Jack managed to snatch the key, swiftly climbed to the outside of the water wheel, and then jumped up to grab a high coconut tree, escaping the melee. However, upon landing, he happened upon the sea ghost carrying the dead man's chest, so he threw a coconut, knocking the sea ghost's head off. Jack has retrieved the heart and made a break for the boat, where he places it in a glass jar. The water ghosts are quick to follow, leaving Jack no option but to use oars to fend them off. In sight, Norrington and Will struggle to control a wildly spinning water wheel that flattens several water ghosts. After coming to a stop, Will is too dizzy to walk. Norrington, accustomed to a life at sea, is still able to run, jump, and even steal the heart from the jar unnoticed. He takes the heart and hides it within his jacket when Jack is too busy fighting. They are surrounded. Norrington grabs the chest and pretends to sacrifice himself. His true intention is to escape with the heart. Despite being blocked by the water ghosts, he uses the chest to defend and manage to depart. The water ghosts, believing their task fulfilled, leave, unaware that the real heart was stolen by Norrington. Jack and the crew then retreat to the Black Pearl. Thinking he has leverage over Davy Jones, his anxieties are gone. Even Gibbs, the first mate, is impressed. But then, the Flying Dutchman bursts through the ocean surface. The sight of this ghost ship and its terrifying crew makes everyone gasp. Everyone except Jack. He holds the jar with boldness, intending to bargain with Davy Jones. Misled by the chest, Davy Jones dismisses Jack's threats and unleashes the full firepower of his ship onto the Black Pearl. The Flying Dutchman, over 60 meters long and with a gun every 3 meters, lays waste to the Black Pearl with just the first barrage. Under such overpowering fire, the Black Pearl's only choice is to flee. Seeing this, Jack takes the helm himself, adroitly evading the incoming cannons. With the advantage of the wind, they quickly leave the Flying Dutchman behind. Cheering ensues amongst the crew. Seeing the Black Pearl distance itself, Davy Jones decides to unleash the sea monster, the Kraken. Just as Jack was celebrating, the ship reels, the jar falls and shatters on the deck. Jack realizes that the heart is missing. At the same time, the sea around the ship begins to boil as the Kraken attaches itself to the hull. As the crew readies the cannons, they see its terrifying suckers slither up the hull. Will places in order to stand down until the tentacles have fully spread. Only then does he give the command to fire. The clash of multiple cannons against Kraken's tentacles chases them away. Agonizing screams echo from the deep as the tentacles retreat. With their success, the crew begins to cheer, but Will knows this is only the beginning. His plan was to escape with Elizabeth in a small boat, but he couldn't let his fellow crew become prey to the Kraken, so they load all the gunpowder they have left into a net for a desperate bid for survival. Underneath the ship, the Kraken contemplates a new attack strategy. On the other side of the ship, Jack boards the last lifeboat and leaves the Black Pearl, choosing to be perceived as a coward, rather than face the beast. Before Elizabeth could react, the Kraken re-emerges. This time, it strikes swiftly and catches the crew off guard. Tentacles sweep through the cabins. Death riddles the ship. A poor crew member is seized and dragged off. The crunch of his bones chillingly clear. The ones on deck fare no better. A man tangled in a tentacle pleads for a quick end. Gibbs reluctantly obliges with his pistol. The net filled with explosives is drawn up. Will stands on top, luring the Kraken. The Kraken retaliates with a mighty sweep. Stuck in his trap, Will attempts to cut the ropes holding him. As Elizabeth hesitates to trigger the detonation, she is pulled down by another tentacle. Although the tentacle was severed by a pirate's axe, they miss the chance to deeply wound the Kraken. Elizabeth tries to recover the shooting mechanism, but it was stepped on by a man none other than Jack, whom she believed had fled. He calmly picks up the trigger, taking aim at the packed explosives. Once he sees that Will is safely back on the deck, he confidently pulls the trigger. The bullet pierces the barrels of gunpowder with pinpoint precision. Despite having driven the Kraken off again, they knew it was far from dead. Begrudgingly, Jack orders everyone to abandon the Black Pearl for the smaller boats. Given the distance to the mainland, Elizabeth forms a plan. She knows the Kraken is after Jack. Marked by the black spot, she shackles him to the mast.
It's after you, not the ship. It's not us. This is the only way, don't you see? I'm not sorry.
She leaves him behind and joins the others in the lifeboat. When queried about Jack, she says that he has chosen to make a sacrifice for their safety. But Jack does not intend to surrender. He breaks open an oil lamp and pours the oil over his shackles to escape. Although successful, the Kraken already looms behind him. The monster opens its enormous maw and spews sticky saliva at Jack, but Jack refuses to go quietly, pulling out his short sword to jab at the Kraken's throat. He disappears beneath the waves, dragged down along with the Black Pearl by the Kraken. At a safe distance, Davy Jones finally relaxes, only to find out that the heart is not in his chest. Frustration roils within him and he curses Jack vehemently. Meanwhile, Norrington trades Davy Jones's heart to Lord Beckett to restore his nobility, making Beckett the new Lord of the Sea. he commands Davy Jones to sail the Flying Dutchman to scour the seas. Every pirate who sees the Dutchman is relentlessly destroyed by its cannons. The Caribbean is no longer a haven for pirates. He also orders all pirates and those affiliated with pirates be hanged. The ruthless scenes prompt the sealed sea goddess to intervene. She revives Barbossa with her magic and asks him to gather all 9 sacred items to free her so she can reign over the sea again. However, one of the sacred items was devoured by the Kraken along with Jack and is now trapped in Davy Jones's locker. The elusive map leading to the locker is only held by Saw Fong, the pirate lord of Singapore, so Barbossa embarks on a quest to procure the map. Fang's headquarters are damp and gloomy, due to his fondness for long baths. The bodies of Fang's men are covered in fungus, and in the deepest part of the bathhouse, Fong emerges gracefully, attended by 2 women. Barbossa quickly bows in greeting. He lies to Fong, claiming he wants to borrow a boat and crew for an adventure. Scratching his head, Fong reveals a thief caught trying to steal the treasure map earlier that day and asks if Barbossa recognizes him. They hoist the thief out of the water, revealing him to be Will. Faced with Fang's question, Barbossa pretends not to know Will. Fong, set to kill the thief, but Elizabeth's scream exposes their true intent. Rattled by Fang's anger, Barbossa reveals their plan to save Jack. Fong, furious because Jack had been involved with his 2 handmaidens, yet all his indignation doesn't change the fact he has no power over Jack. Appalled to find one of his men's tattoo fading, Fong suspects Barbossa of planting an informant, and retaliates immediately, as Fong goes to tackle the infiltrator.
Kill him, he's not our man.
Barbossa quickly denies knowing this individual. Clearly, a third party is involved, and before they can take any action, Beckett's Royal Navy storms Fang's hideout. In the chaos of fighting with the Navy, Will sees an opportunity to free himself. The handmaidens of Fong join the fight. Outnumbered, their advantage quickly dwindles. One of the women succumbs. A sailor takes a chance and ignites the explosives in the basement. The detonation buys the outnumbered pirates time. They manage to escape, but Fang's hideout is seized by the Navy. To add insult to injury, he finds out that Will has been in league with Beckett all along. His intention? To bring the Black Pearl back from the Otherworld in exchange for his father's freedom. This was the sole reason for Will to rescue Jack. After the agreement was reached, Will set out to steal the treasure map and, leading a full squad of the Royal Navy, intended to arrest Saw Fong. When the Royal Navy burst into the room, Saw Fong suspected that Will was Beckett's undercover. Yet, Saw Fong didn't kill Will since he had been contemplating siding with Beckett. Thus, he made a deal with Will, promising to hand over the treasure map on the condition that Will would recommend him to Beckett. After the agreement, Saw Fong provided a team, the treasure map, and the ship Sea Sparrow. At once they started their adventure towards Davy Jones's locker. Upon reaching the frigid territories of the Antarctic, Barbossa's monkey and the crew were shivering from the cold. The extreme temperatures resulted in the crew's toes being frozen off, and incessant complaints arose from them. If the sea goddess can resurrect Barbossa, why not just resurrect Jack? The sea goddess mentioned that only in the mortal world can magic be used to regain the soul of the dead. Jack's body and soul were trapped in Davy Jones's locker. No one could rescue him from the sea god. Worse still, the treasure map contained elements of yin and yang in the 8 diagrams. This culture puzzled Will greatly, and all he got was a riddle.
Samurai says, flash of green.
Gibbs announced that he was fortunate to have witnessed an astronomical event once. The rumor was if there was a green glow towards the sky at sunrise, a soul would return to the mortal world. On hearing this, Barbossa comforted everyone that going to Davy Jones's locker wasn't difficult. The true challenge lies in returning. They then headed towards a valley created by an iceberg. After traversing a deep, dark river, they arrived at the starlit dark sea where reflections of many stars made the place dreamlike. Meanwhile, Jack was confined in Davy Jones's locker with a split personality disorder. He not only fantasized about his love story with a goat but also imagined himself as a laying hen, being close to the underworld. The locker wasn't terrifying but rather lonely. The longer Jack was confined, the more personalities were split from him. Each illusion represented a different character, including one indecisiveness. It was this character that led to Jack being eaten by the Kraken, and seeing this, Jack didn't hesitate to kill off this weak personality. He sank into his mental world, self-talking in the end, and was unable to pull himself out. No matter how he looked at his characters, he couldn't escape from the desert of despair. However, he's still valuable, as everyone had already arrived at the quiet, deep dark sea. The beautiful reflections of numerous stars on the sea were breathtaking. Just as Will was admiring the view, he noticed the waterfall at the edge of the sea. Moving forward might mean death. He immediately woke everyone and attempted to turn the ship around. Barbossa believed that only by getting lost could they reach the unreachable. Clearly, he had a profound understanding of exploring mysteries. Sea Sparrow overran the waterfall, a free fall which lasted 5 days before they arrived at Davy Jones's locker. Here was only an endless desert of white sand and a vast blue sea, but Jack was nowhere to be found. The goddess of the sea can only dispatch her pet crabs to show the way. Jack continues persistently searching for an escape route, when suddenly a stone materializes on the ground. Jack picks up the stone and takes a harsh bite, only to discover it's exceedingly bitter. He throws it several meters away with force. Unexpectedly, after a while, the stone transforms into a crab. Seeing that Jack cannot move the black pearl, he decides to go back and call for his crew's help. With the signal from Scissorhand, all the stones in front transform into crabs in response. Tens of thousands of crabs manage to move the black pearl. Soon, everyone sees the black pearl approaching. Jack stands at the mast, crossing the white desert under the people's gaze and sailing into the blue sea. Everyone rushes forward to greet them, but to escape the cursed land, Jack has to cooperate with Barbossa, who holds the treasure map. However, as soon as they board the ship, they start arguing over the captain's position. What's more, Jack falls into deep self-deprecation because his telescope is smaller than Barbossa's. Sailing on the sea of the underworld at night, they discover countless floating spirits in the water. The sea goddess tells them that the souls were supposed to be ferried to the underworld by Davy Jones, but his betrayal of the contract turned the souls into wandering ghosts. As a result, he was cursed by the sea and transformed into an octopus-like creature. Then, another wave of special souls float by. They are the wrong souls who were killed and thrown into the sea. Elizabeth sees her father, Weatherby, among them. Joyfully, she calls his name, thinking they've returned to the world of the living, but Jack points out they're still in the underworld, and that's just her father's spirit. After seeing his daughter, Weatherby reveals how he died. Davy Jones is a tool for ferrying the dead. Whoever kills Davy Jones will become the next captain and continue to ferry the dead. When Weatherby learned the secret, he was silenced by Beckett, because Beckett did not want to let anyone know that controlling Davy Jones means controlling the sea. Elizabeth throws down a rope in an attempt to haul her father on board, but he calmly chooses death.
I'm so proud of you, Elizabeth. I'll give your love to your mother, shall I?
Everybody can only try to comfort Elizabeth, but no one can change the sad outcome. By the next afternoon, they've exhausted their supplies. If they don't get out of here before sunset, they'll be lost forever between the realms of the living and the dead. Will recalls the riddle on the treasure map. At sunrise, a green light beams up to the sky. The problem is that the green light only appears at sunset. Will's soliloquy gives Jack an idea. He manipulates the map and discovers the secret. If up is down, then sunset is sunrise, and they can return to the world of the living as long as they flip the ship. Knowing how hard it would be to explain, he gets everyone to run from side to side on the ship, which soon begins to sway under the force of gravity. Looking at the treasure map, Barbossa also grasps the underlying meaning. He goes down to the hold and has everyone cut all the ropes binding the goods to increase the intensity of the sway. Thanks to the efforts of all the crew, the deck of the Black Pearl stands completely vertical to the sea level. Although they manage to hold onto the gunwale of the ship, they lose their footing. A sailor who didn't get a good grip falls onto the ship's net, and a falling cannon prevents him from returning to the world of the living. Then the entire ship flips over in the water. As the afterglow of the setting sun fades away, a green light soars into the sky. The Black Pearl is instantaneously pulled above the sea by a great force. Watching the rising sun, they've indeed returned to the world of the living, but the next second they draw their guns and point at each other. The situation becoming tense, though they've been through adventures together. Everyone has their own agenda. Barbossa wants Jack to join the Pirate Council to fight against Beckett and Davy Jones. Elizabeth wants to use the power of the pirates to take down Beckett and avenge her father, so she also needs Jack to join the Pirate Council. Will wants to use the Black Pearl to free his father, while Jack fears being caught by Davy Jones again after losing the battle, so he intends to keep running. Seeing they can't reach a consensus, Will suggests looking for some food first. Through the treasure map, they discover a small island ahead, but as everyone disembarks, they're hit with a stench. A colossal creature is found dead on the black beach. Upon closer inspection, they realize it's the sea monster Kraken. It's a tragic end for this king of the sea. Fearful of Davy Jones using the Kraken against him, Beckett forced Davy Jones to kill the Kraken with a poison apple. Looking at the poisoned Kraken, Jack understands that the world of the pirates is getting smaller. At this moment, A pirate ship is rapidly approaching the Black Pearl. The men provided by Saw Fong draw their guns at Jack. Only after they're taken aboard the ship do they learn that in order to rescue his father with the Black Pearl, Will has betrayed Jack and Barbassa to Saw Fong. Unexpectedly, Saw Fong goes back on his word and gives him a harsh lesson. Meanwhile, Jack is presented by Saw Fong as a gift to Beckett. At this time, Beckett's men board the Black Pearl in small boats. Beckett initially promises to exchange Jack for the Black Pearl, but like Saw Fong, Beckett also turns out to be untrustworthy and gives a stern lesson to Saw Fong. Barbassa advises Saw Fong they can only win the future if they unite as pirates, but Saw Fong believes that Beckett's fleet is at least 10 times the size of the pirates. In addition, he controls Davy Jones, the Sea King. The pirates have no power to confront Beckett. Barbassa argues they can reverse the situation if they free the sea goddess. Mistaking Elizabeth for the enshrined sea goddess, Saw Fong instantly changes his mind. As long as he can take Elizabeth with him, he'll help Barbassa and the others to escape. Will immediately tries to prevent this, but Elizabeth thinks this is the only way they can escape, so she agrees to Saw Feng's proposal. On a nearby ship, Beckett is negotiating with Jack. He wants Jack to spy for him, to investigate the latest news from the Pirate Council. The reward would be that Davy Jones would no longer pursue him. Jack agrees to Beckett on the surface, but in reality, he simply wants to delay Davy Jones' pursuit. Just as they reach an agreement, a cannonball suddenly attacks at Saw Fong, launching an assault. He sails away with Elizabeth, and with Saw Feng's help, Barbassa recaptures the Black Pearl. Jack also seizes the moment of chaos to grab the ropes of a sail and returns to the Black Pearl. They decide to meet at Shipwreck Cove for the Pirate Council. Beckett didn't expect Saw Fong to pull such a move. He immediately dispatched Davy Jones to pursue Saw Fong. At that moment, Elizabeth was detained on the Empress by Saw Fong. He clapped his hands to dismiss the maids and started to chew a leaf. Saw Feng's ambition was great. He wanted the sea goddess to bear his offspring so he could dominate the sea. He began to do something against morals, but Elizabeth fought back and bit him fiercely. Saw Fong instantly became furious and prepared to retaliate with all his strength. At this point, Davy Jones had already caught up, and his phantom crew members, grabbing the ropes, boarded the Empress. They attacked the unlucky crew members, tearing and biting. Saw Fong never imagined that he would pay with his life for a kiss. His retribution came so swiftly that he became convinced Elizabeth was the sea goddess. He took the token of the Pirate King from around his neck and passed his position as the Singapore Pirate King to Elizabeth. Before leaving the living world, his second-in-command, who had been with Saw Fong for over 30 years, entered. Seeing Saw Fong hand the position to a woman, he was outraged and turned around to leave, but as soon as he walked out the door, he was caught by the Royal Navy.
Captain!
Captain,
Captain!
Tow the ship.
The leader was Commodore Norrington, who had loved Elizabeth for many years. He now commands Davy Jones. When Davy Jones was about to threaten Elizabeth, Norrington bluntly told him to get lost. Davy Jones left embarrassingly, but Elizabeth was not grateful. She swore she would kill Beckett to avenge her father, so she firmly chose the side of the pirates. She didn't know that all of Norrington's efforts to ascend in rank were for her. Norrington could only order his men to drag the Empress away with ropes and imprison all the crew members. Elizabeth, knowing that Will's father had served on the Flying Dutchman for over a decade, tried to use the relationship for help. She asked if any of them knew Bill Turner, but all she received in response was heartless and rude laughter. Then a voice came from the prison wall. Elizabeth turned around and saw a man whose body had fused with the ship.
William.
Excited at hearing his son's name, Bill stood up, thinking of the promise his son had made. He thought Will had finally come to save him, but looking at Elizabeth's delicate face, he fell into despair again, because for his son to rescue him, he would have to kill Davy Jones. If you become the captain of the Flying Dutchman, you can only come ashore once every 10 years. By then, his son would not be able to spend day and night with the one he loved. Bill didn't believe his son would give up Elizabeth for him.
You won't pick me. I wouldn't pick me.
Then he returned to the wall, sleeping enveloped by sea creatures. Elizabeth wanted to say more, but Bill suddenly opened his eyes.
You know my name. He's coming for me. Wait and see.
Elizabeth knew that Bill also wanted to be chosen, but she was helpless. A few hours later, while the guards were resting, Norrington opened the prison door and let Elizabeth go. Under the cover of the moonlight, they climbed along the rope towards the Empress. Despite working for Beckett continuously, Norrington did everything for the purpose of marrying Elizabeth. In this critical moment, Elizabeth's plans were disrupted by Norrington. so she invited Norrington to join her pirate alliance. Just as Norrington was hesitating, the delirious Bill heard the noise and followed. Having been fused with the ship for too long, Bill only remembers the order to obey the captain. Norrington could only let Elizabeth go first and decided to stay behind. As Bill's voice grew louder, Norrington was forced to shoot and break the rope between the two ships. When he turned around, Bill seized the chance to pierce him with a sword. After Elizabeth escaped successfully, Norrington was on the brink of death.
James Norrington, do you fear death? I take that as a no. Nice sword.
Davy Jones ordered the Phantom crew to retrieve the dead man's chest from the captain's cabin. Just when they managed to control the Royal Navy on board, they found out that Beckett's men had become the new captain. On the other hand, Will had never given up on his father. On the way to Shipwreck Cove aboard the Black Pearl, he had been assassinating sailors and using their bodies as navigational guides to Beckett, the aim being to use the power of the pirates to kill Beckett and thus rescue his father. Upon discovery, Jack proposed a better plan. He asked Will to gain Beckett's trust with the compass in order to lead them to the pirate gathering at Shipwreck Cove. He would then seize the opportunity to board the Flying Dutchman and pierce Davy Jones' heart, freeing Bill's father, and leaving him to live out his days with Elizabeth. This time Jack didn't manipulate Will because he knew that as long as he was alive, Davy Jones wouldn't leave him alone. Assassinating Davy Jones was his only way out. Will considered this a fair deal, agreed to Jack's plan, and then Jack sent Will off the ship. As Jack's undercover agent, Will found Beckett. He surrendered with the compass and offered to lead Beckett to Shipwreck Cove. Beckett immediately promoted him to the rank of Commodore and fell for Jack's trap. In the meantime, the Black Pearl had already reached Shipwreck Cove. Built out of countless derelict ships, it was a stronghold, impenetrable and serving as the base for all the Caribbean pirates. Without guidance, it was impossible to find this place. The Pirate Council was declared to start under the leadership of Barbossa. He asked the various pirate kings to present their tokens of identity. Due to their poor state at the founding of the Pirate Council, they couldn't afford to use silver coins to seal the sea goddess, so they used miscellaneous items instead. They were respectively the snuff box of the Indian Pirate King, the playing cards of the Mediterranean Pirate King, the bottle mouth of the Adriatic Sea Pirate King, and the spectacles of the South Sea Pirate King. The token of the Caspian Sea Pirate King Barbossa was a one-eyed pirate's glass eyeball. The token of the Caribbean Pirate King Jack was the silver coin on his bandana. However, he didn't hurry to present his token but decided to wait until the Singapore Pirate King, Saw Fong, arrived. At this time Elizabeth, who had escaped, arrived. She told the others that Saw Fong had been killed by the Royal Navy and that she was the new captain. Moreover, Beckett already knew the location of Shipwreck Cove, and they'd be under attack soon. Barbossa immediately proposed to release the Sea Goddess to defeat Beckett. Since the Sea Goddess was sealed at the First Pirate Council, the seas have indeed become calmer, but this also facilitated Beckett's Royal Navy. If no measures were taken, their living space would become smaller and smaller. Some pirates believed that the Sea Goddess was capricious and difficult to control, and might retaliate against the pirates for her imprisonment. Disagreements among the pirate kings led to a fight. Jack also believed that relying on the Sea Goddess was unreliable, so he proposed to act according to the rules of the pirate code. One pirate who didn't want to comply with the code was instantly killed on the spot. The one who shot him was Jack's father, Dick. He was the previous pirate king of the Caribbean. After passing on his position to Jack, he became the guardian of the pirate code. According to legend, he acquired supernatural power. Therefore, all the pirates would not dare to rebel when they saw Dick. The pirate code states that when there's disagreement between the pirate kings, an emperor can be elected through voting to make the final decision. However, the pirate kings only voted for themselves, showing a complete disregard for the bigger picture. At the critical moment, Jack voted for Elizabeth, knowing that she will declare war on Beckett, giving him the opportunity to stab the heart. Although other pirates were dissatisfied, they obediently followed the change due to Teague's authority.
What say you, Captain Swan, King of the Brethren Court?
Prepare every vessel that floats. At dawn, we're at war.
Seeing his plan falling through, Barbossa asked Pintel to hide all the artifacts. Still wanting to release the Sea Goddess, Dick knew his son wanted to kill Davy Jones and achieve immortality, so he told him that living life to its fullest is more important than living forever. At daybreak, all the pirates stand above the sea, intending to fight Beckett to the death. However, when the fog lifted, they saw an endless line of Beckett's warships. which sapped the courage of the pirates on the spot. With the stark difference in strength, they could only negotiate with Beckett on a sandbar. Unable to come ashore, Davy Jones stood inside a bucket of water. Barbossa blamed Will for bringing Beckett to Shipwreck Cove, constantly berating his betrayal. However, Jack is the actual mastermind behind all these. Elizabeth, knowing Jack's intention to kill Davy Jones, proposed to exchange Jack for Will. Barbossa immediately disagreed with this because he needed Jack to release the sea goddess. At this point, Jack willingly removed his bandana, letting Barbossa understand his intentions, to fake anger and sword cut Jack in a competitive spirit, watching whose plan can succeed. After the hostage exchange, Beckett proposed that if the pirates were willing to surrender, he would release half of them, otherwise, he would kill them all. However, facing the irreconcilable enemy who was responsible for her father's death, Elizabeth would naturally not surrender. After the parties returned to their camps for the final preparation, Barbossa didn't at all believe that Jack could kill Davy Jones. He asked his men to bind the sea goddess and took Elizabeth's amulet from her neck to prepare to release the sea goddess, hoping to turn the tide. The sacred item, ignited by a spell, rose in a thick smoke and was sucked into the nose of the sea goddess. She began to swell and the ropes couldn't hold her. Her form grew, and the deck couldn't bear the weight. Planks started collapsing, and everyone was stunned by the scene. The sea goddess was completely unleashed, and Barbossa immediately stepped forward, kneeling on the ground and pleading with the sea goddess to help punish Beckett and Davy Jones. But the sea goddess knew that it was Davy Jones and the 9 pirate kings who had sealed her. So, the next moment, she reprimanded all the pirates. She decided to remain neutral and not help anyone. After venting her anger, the sea goddess transformed into countless crabs, surging towards the deck like tsunami waves. As the crabs disappeared into the ocean, the sea goddess also vanished. Just as everyone was trying to figure out what had happened, a gust of wind blew a pirate's hat into the sky. Suddenly a black cloud appeared in the previously clear sky. Although they didn't get the assistance of the sea goddess, their only chance was to fight their way out. Therefore, all the pirates simultaneously raised their attack flags. Observing the spirited pirates, Beckett remained confident and allowed Davy Jones to take the lead. Seeing the whirlpool in the sky, Davy Jones knew his loved one had been released and was immediately furious. So, overtaken by anger, Davy Jones steered the Flying Dutchman right toward the pirates' camp. At this point, the sea goddess erected a battle platform in the middle of the ocean. Other ships were afraid of this power and dared not approach. Only the Flying Dutchman and the Black Pearl bravely went ahead. At this time, the whirlpool was too deep. The heavy currents were letting the 2 ships get within each other's firing range. Both stretched out their cannons, following Barbossa and Davy Jones' lead. All cannons on both ships were ignited. The ultimate battle was about to start. Both ships fired at each other for a long time without determining a winner. The vortex's stirring made the 2 ships even closer, so the sailors from both sides grabbed the ropes, swung across the sea, and began a brutal melee. They roared angrily, vowing to have a satisfying kill. Will saw all the specters coming aboard the Black Pearl and pulled out his sword bravely to fight. He wasn't sure he could survive this war, so he proposed to Elizabeth. Then in the midst of the chaotic and dangerous battlefield, they decided to have a wedding ceremony, asking Barbossa to officiate.
Dearly beloved, we be gathered here today. Today, the kisses of a mask,
Finally, in the midst of the storm-tossed battlefield, they were able to hold their beloved in their arms, witnessed by countless pirates and specters. They officially became husband and wife. 2 pirates watched the scene with envious expressions. Unfortunately, the war was still not over, and the fight between the 2 sides didn't stop for Will's romantic wedding. Although Barbossa was strong, he couldn't tip the scales of victory in favor of the pirates. At this moment, the schizophrenic Jack was still in the cell on the Flying Dutchman. Jack couldn't accept that his brain had been licked by someone, so he used leverage to escape the constraints of the cell. He planned to find Davy Jones's heart and rewrite his sad fate. At this moment, the Flying Dutchman was fiercely against the Black Pearl, and Davy Jones found the opportunity to take down Beckett's underlings. He extended his long beard into his subordinate's brain, and with his subordinate falling onto the floor, Davy Jones also got the key to the dead man's chest. He decided to go to the captain's cabin and retrieve the heart immediately, but Jack had stolen the heart first. Unfortunately, as soon as he arrived on the deck, he he came face to face with Davy Jones. Jones drew his sword and tried to kill Jack. Knowing that he wasn't a match for the 7 specters, Jack quickly climbed onto the ship's rail, used the dead man's chest to cut the ropes of the ship's sail. With swift agility, he leapt and floated on the sail of the Flying Dutchman. He didn't expect that Davy Jones could teleport in the vicinity of the Flying Dutchman. Immediately after, Davy Jones roared, and the two began fighting on the sail dozens of meters high. Since Jones was cursed and seldom used the sword, his swordplay was utterly crushed by Jack. At a critical moment, his beard with the key was chopped off by Jack, and the sword in his hand was knocked off. Fortunately, his left crab claw was far hardier, breaking Jack's sword cleanly. At this moment, the masts of the two ships hit each other hard, causing Jack to fall off the mast. Fearful that the dead man's chest would fall into the sea, Jones grabbed Jack and flung him. Unexpectedly, at this moment a sailor came flying. Jack grabbed the rope and realized this was the specter who had taken his gun. Jack held onto the rope, swung behind Davy Jones, and shot the dead man's chest out of his hand. The chest fell from a great height and hit the hermit crab on the head. Will saw the chest fall on the ground, grabbed the sail rope and reached the Flying Dutchman. He picked up the chest and planned to leave, but he came across his father, Bill Turner, at the corner. At this point, Bill had completely lost his sanity, couldn't even recognize his own son, and not far away, Davy Jones had climbed down the mast and retrieved his sword that had fallen onto the deck. After getting rid of the guards in front of him, he rushed to collect the chest on the ground. Jack, using the sail rope hanging in the air, appeared in front of Davy Jones at the critical moment, but as soon as he was about to draw his sword for a fight, he remembered that his sword had been broken by Davy Jones, so he could only avoid Davy Jones by hiding behind the capstan. Unexpectedly, Davy Jones merged with the capstan and ultimately knocked Jack down to the ground because he didn't have a weapon. Seeing this situation, Elizabeth hurriedly caught the rope of the sail, helped Jack and engaged Davy Jones. Unfortunately, Davy Jones was too strong, and Elizabeth was quickly knocked unconscious. Just as Davy Jones was about to attack Elizabeth, Will arrived in time and stabbed Davy Jones in the chest, but Davy Jones was unharmed. He turned around, swept Will off his feet with his leg. Jealous of the love between Will and Elizabeth, he held his sword to Will's neck, intending to split them apart. At this time, the beard with the key was picked up by Jack. He appeared behind Davy Jones on time. As long as he used the broken sword to stab the heart, he could live forever, while Will and Elizabeth could live together. Davy Jones saw his defeat was certain, turned around and left a dilemma for Jack. What seemed to be a happy ending turned into nothing because of Jack's hesitation. Seeing his close companion, Will, on the verge of death, Jack was caught in a dilemma. At this moment, Bill, woken up by his son's scream, frantically rushed towards Davy Jones and they started brawling. However, he was no match for Davy Jones and was pinned down. Just when Bill was at the end of his rope, Davy Jones suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart, and his octopus beard twisted painfully. When he turned back, he saw Jack had plunged the sword into his heart using Will's hand at the last minute. Davy Jones looked up at the sky, then threw himself into the deep whirlpool. The previous Sea Lord has fallen. Then all the crew came to Will, because the Flying Dutchman required a captain to assume the duty to ferry the dead. Thus, Will's heart was taken out and placed in the dead man's chest. Now, the two ships were about to sink into the sea due to the whirlpool's stirring. Barbossa quickly ordered to launch bombs to separate the intertwined masts, allowing the Black Pearl to escape the whirlpool's pull. Beckett's two guards also managed to escape danger at the critical moment. They grabbed the sail rope and swung across the sea, deciding to be pirates with Jack in the future. At the critical moment, Jack also made a simple parachute with the sail, taking Elizabeth and Barbossa's pet monkey to leave the sinking Flying Dutchman. Meanwhile, Will and the Flying Dutchman disappeared into the sea with the mighty whirlpool. Then Jack and Elizabeth landed on the sea surface, and Barbossa drove the Black Pearl to pick them up. Instead of choosing to escape upon seeing the mighty Royal Navy, Jack ordered to set sail and attack. At this time, there was the sound of surging waves not far away. The Flying Dutchman broke through the waves like a beast. Its majestic appearance crushed all the ships present. Even the Black Pearl couldn't compete. Beckett thought Davy Jones was helping him, so he ordered all the cannons to be aimed to eliminate all the pirates once and for all. However, to Beckett's surprise, the Flying Dutchman didn't fire at the Black Pearl. Instead, took advantage of the situation and rushed towards him. When the Flying Dutchman got closer, he noticed that the curses on all the specters had been removed and they had returned to their human forms. Will was now the captain. At this point, Beckett had no retreat. Following Jack and Will's command, the entire sea broke out into a hail of cannon fire. Soon the royal ship lost its combat effectiveness. Watching his grand ship break apart, Beckett was completely dispirited. He seemed to accept this outcome and calmly walked down the gangway in the deafening sound of gunfire. His grand ambitions were turned to ashes along with him in the sea. Seeing their commanders fall, the rest of the Navy ships dispersed in panic. The pirates, through their unwavering courage, had finally won their freedom. Will fulfilled his promise and gave his father freedom, but Bill decided to stay on the ship to spend the rest of his life with Will. Subsequently, Will entrusted Elizabeth with the dead man's chest that contained his heart, and they swore to never betray each other. Then, Will sailed off on the Flying Dutchman and disappeared in a flash of green light. Meanwhile, Barbossa stole Jack's black pearl with a plan to lead everyone in search of the Fountain of Youth to ensure eternal youth. However, Jack was ahead of him, stealing Barbossa's treasure map. As the map slowly unfurled, a new adventure was about to begin. The legend of immortality has always circulated in the deep sea. It's claimed that drinking from the Fountain of Youth can give you eternal youth. This is exceedingly tempting for those on the verge of old age. However, drinking from the fountain requires a significant price. Firstly, a specific cup must be used to drink the water, and to it, a mermaid's tear must be added. Only then can the effect be realized. Over centuries, people have continuously sought to capture mermaids, seeking their tears for eternal life. However, most died along the path of the adventure, and the success stories are few and far between. Yet, the temptation of immortality keeps people striding forward. Hence the tale of the tumultuous seas unravels. Ever since the victory in the Battle of the Great Whirlpool, Barbossa stole Jack's black pearl, commencing his journey across the sea. However, it wasn't long before he was ambushed by a captain known as Blackbeard. Blackbeard was adept in black magic and possessed an ancient artifact, the Sword of Triton. He loved to steal everyone else's ships and collect them in beer bottles. Because Barbossa didn't react in time, he lost the battle and consequently lost a leg. After narrowly escaping death, Barbossa took refuge with the King of England, seeking an opportunity for revenge. While Blackbeard successfully seized the Black Pearl, he soon received a death notice. According to a seer, Blackbeard would die at the hands of a peg-legged man within 2 weeks. Fearing this prophecy, he immediately decided to seek the Fountain of Youth. However, the only person in the world who knew the route was Jack, who held the treasure map. So Blackbeard sent his daughter, Angelica, to find Jack. Since Angelica used to be Jack's girlfriend, he didn't suspect her. Caught off guard, Jack was drugged into a stupor and taken to Blackbeard's ship. At this time, the King of Spain also learned about the Fountain of Youth. Believing the fountain a symbol of evil, he immediately deployed a fleet to destroy it. Barbossa, who had aligned himself with the King of England, immediately informed the king about the Spaniards' quest for the fountain. The English king was immediately agitated. He wouldn't allow Spain to locate the fountain before England and ordered Barbossa to set sail immediately. However, Barbossa didn't care who found the fountain first. His ultimate goal was to defeat Blackbeard in revenge. Thus, the three forces set out on their grand voyage toward the Fountain of Youth. Meanwhile, Jack woke up from his slumber to find himself aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge. But, strangely, Jack hadn't encountered Captain Blackbeard after a week sailing aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge. He assumed that Blackbeard must not be on the ship, so he gathered all the sailors one night intending to revolt. Upon successfully doing so, they divided the treasure among themselves, which excited the sailors, who then immediately prepared for action. Though Blackbeard's loyal subordinates were all zombies, who were immune to normal physical attacks, still, the sheer firepower of the sailors quickly overwhelmed them. Just when Jack was about to claim victory, the captain's chamber door suddenly opened, and an annoyed Blackbeard strode out with heavy footsteps. He angrily smashed the bottle of wine in his hand and drew the Sword of Triton, forged by Poseidon's son. With the sword pointing upwards, the Queen Anne's Revenge responded as if it came alive. The sails fell automatically and the speed increased abruptly. Blackbeard gestured forward, and the ropes came alive, moving like pythons, quickly hanging up all the rebelling sailors. As they awaited Blackbeard's judgment, he pulled out a gun intending to shoot Jack, who'd led the insurrection. Angelica hurriedly intervened, knowing that only Jack could lead them to the Fountain of Youth. However, letting them go so easily could lead to future rebellions. So, under everyone's watchful gaze, the cook was blasted by the ship's fire, and Blackbeard didn't stop until he was burnt to ashes. After intimidating the sailors, Blackbeard took Jack to his quarters, where he wanted him to reveal the location of the Fountain of Youth. But, while Jack was responding, he stealthily grabbed a knife intending to kill Blackbeard. However, Blackbeard, being skilled in his dark magic, had already anticipated his intentions and gave him advice about being honest. Then, he displayed a doll made from Jack's hair. When he stabbed the doll, Jack felt an instant sting. He slashed at the doll's chest, and immediately, similar wounds appear on Jack's chest. Subsequently, Blackbeard placed the doll over a fire and Jack instantly smelled of burning flesh. Under the control of the dark doll, Jack had no choice but to lead them to the Fountain of Youth. But getting to the fountain included crossing the treacherous Whitecap Bay. The region was teeming with carnivorous mermaids, and for eternal life, a mermaid's tear was required. So, Blackbeard lit a lantern and ordered his men to prepare to capture mermaids. Pressured by the zombies, they started singing a song to lure the mermaids. As expected, the beautiful mermaids were soon attracted. Beneath their angelic appearances were hearts of beasts. The experienced sailors drew their knives immediately, ready to fight, but the young sailors lost themselves in the allure and got dangerously close to them. The mermaid, having baited him, called to her kind, and soon the small boat was surrounded by a group of beautiful mermaids. The young sailor was completely smitten and leaned forward intending to kiss one. Thankfully, the older sailor maintained his resolve, saving the young man's life just in time. The mermaids, bearing their true colors, leapt out of the water, launching an attack on the men on the ship. In the blink of an eye, many men became the mermaid's meal. Seeing his opportunity, Blackbeard released a burst of fire, attempting to drive the mermaids into the already set trap. However, this only enraged them further. With more mermaids emerging from the sea, they shot lethal seaweed ropes from afar, which quickly dismantled Blackbeard's trap. Seeing the chaos, Jack urged everyone to return to shore, but Blackbeard, callously disregarding the safety of his crew, insisted they keep fishing, or else face certain death. At this critical moment, Jack frantically returned to the lighthouse, where, seizing an iron rod, he cracked open a canister of fish oil. Following the massive fish oil spill, the lighthouse erupted in a blaze, finally getting rid of all the mermaids. At this time, a good-hearted mermaid saved Philip, who was about to be struck by some burning debris. But, in doing so, she ends up trapped in a water tank and is immediately captured. The next day, Blackbeard ordered his men to carry the mermaid and continue towards the Fountain of Youth. During a rest, Philip noticed that the mermaid named Serena was gasping for air. Knowing that the mermaid needed oxygen, Philip requested the zombies to open the tank. However, the zombies refused Philip's request for the fear that Serena might escape. Philip decisively drew a sword from a zombie and pried open the glass tank. As Serena took deep breaths of fresh air, an unusual feeling stirred within them both. Then they continued their journey but were stopped by a cliff. The compass suggested that they needed to detour to find the Grail before they could reach the Fountain of Youth. But Blackbeard was running out of time. He grabbed the compass and ordered Jack to jump off the cliff and search for the Grail. Jack, pretending to be acrophobic, refused to jump. Blackbeard proceeded to draw his gun, threatening to kill Angelica, Jack's ex-girlfriend, if he didn't. Seeing that Jack didn't believe him, Blackbeard ordered his men to bring 6 guns, 2 of them loaded, ready to play a cruel game of Russian roulette. He allowed Jack to choose his preferred firearm, then firmly picked up a flintlock rifle and pulled the trigger. The gun was empty, and reassured, Jack declared that none of them had bullets. However, the sound of a gunshot proved that Blackbeard wasn't bluffing. To protect Angelica, Jack had no choice but to leap off the cliff. Blackbeard, on the other hand, continued his journey to the Fountain of Youth with the crew. Simultaneously, Barbossa arrived at Whitecap Bay, and by observing the decay of corpses, he knew that Blackbeard was close by. Likewise, driven by revenge, he immediately arranged to ambush Blackbeard. However, startled shouts erupted behind them and they turned to see Barbossa's ship being dragged under the sea by mermaids. With no retreat path left, Barbossa's determination for revenge was only strengthened. While passing through a forest, a poisonous frog jumped onto Gibbs' shoulder. Barbossa quickly advised him to stay still, then carefully trapped the frog in a bottle, intending to use it to kill Blackbeard. Late into the night, Jack found the ship containing the Grail hidden in the riverbed. As he crawled inside, he discovered a treasure trove, and the former owner of the Grail, Ponce de Leon, lying in bed. While he was searching for the Grail, Barbossa, who had set an ambush, appeared. They immediately drew their weapons on each other. However, the unsteady ship, stuck on a riverbed, threatened to topple them into the valley with the slightest tilt. The shifting ship revealed the treasure chest containing the Grail. The two decided to set aside their disagreements and jointly opened the chest. To their surprise, the Spaniards had taken the Grail, but Ponce de Leon's map was still there. Just as Jack was about to take the map, the long-dead Ponce de Leon suddenly moved. Barbossa quickly signaled him to put it back, and Ponce de Leon resumed his previous state. After a single glance at the map, Barbossa identified the Spaniards' camp. They sneaked into the camp, spotting the Spanish general and the two Grails in his possession, while Barbossa was planning their escape. Jack decided to act directly, stealthily stealing the Grail from the table while the guard was cleaning the other. The moment the guard reached for the table, the Grail that he had just put down was stolen. Upon sensing something amiss, the guard was about to call for help but was knocked out by Barbossa. Although they obtained the Grail successfully, they were immediately caught by sentinels and bound to a large tree. By break of dawn, a group of strong men were carrying Serena towards the Fountain of Youth. One of them accidentally shattered the glass tank, and Serena's tail surprisingly transformed into legs upon touching the ground, and her scales quickly disappeared. While everyone else was admiring her graceful figure, Philip removed his coat and put it on Serena, impatient for the Fountain of Youth. Blackbeard hurried everyone to move on, since Serena couldn't walk with her newly formed legs. Philip offered to carry her. During a rest, Philip was captivated by Serena's exquisite beauty and professed his feelings for her, especially after learning that she was captured trying to save him. Upon nightfall, the group arrived near the Fountain of Youth, a place surrounded by mermaid corpses. Blackbeard urged Serena to learn her lesson and shed tears quickly, otherwise, she would end up like the sun-dried corpses around her. However, Serena was resolute, refusing to shed even a single tear even under brutal assault. The other sailors suggested cutting off her fingers one by one as a severe punishment. Only Philip stood up to protect Serena, but his action not only failed to change the situation but also revealed their mutual fondness to Blackbeard. So, Blackbeard threatened Serena that if she didn't shed tears, he would kill Philip. Seeing Serena still defiant, Blackbeard ordered his men to kill Philip directly. Even then, Serena only showed a brief moment of sadness before her expression hardened into one of hatred again. Seeing her stubbornness, Blackbeard finally decided to leave everyone be. A few hours later, Philip woke up, realizing that he had only been drugged. At the earliest opportunity, he rushed back to free Serena.
You know not of kindness.
Hearing this, Serena shed tears of joy. Suddenly, Blackbeard's sailors pounced on Serena and successfully collected her tears. Serena thought Philip had deceived her, but quickly realized it was Blackbeard's plot. Fearing reprisal from the mermaid, Blackbeard tied her to a tree and left. Elsewhere, Barbossa and Jack, who had failed to escape, were tied to a tree. Jack assumed Barbossa's amputated leg contained a knife to cut their ropes. Much to his surprise, it was actually filled with rum, the pirate's favorite drink. Finally having the opportunity to communicate openly while sharing a few drinks, Jack learned that Barbossa's ultimate goal was to take revenge on Blackbeard, leading him to decide to cooperate with Barbossa. Utilizing the pulling force of the rope, Jack slid upward using his legs and soon reached the top of the tree. Then he threw out a rope tied to a coconut to distract the guards, and Barbossa was successfully rescued by his man. Next, they wrestled the Grail back from the hands of the Spaniards, while Barbossa quietly followed Jack, looking for an opportunity to assassinate Blackbeard. The following day, Jack located Blackbeard and exchanged the Grail for his compass. He, in turn, presented the compass to Gibbs, hinting he should retrieve the Black Pearl. Subsequently, they arrived at the entrance of the Fountain of Youth. As Jack recited the inscription on the Grail, a few streams of water suddenly emerged from the ground. Water swiftly streamed up along the walls, eventually forming a pool above everyone's head. Seeing a bird disappear as it flew into it, Jack quickly hoisted himself up onto a sailor's shoulders and reached into the pool with a gear. Suddenly, an invisible force whisked him away into an enigmatic realm. It was the legendary Temple of Eternal Water. Although the grandeur of the temple had long since faded, the magic of the eternal spring still lingered. Blackbeard immediately declared his intent to be the first one to drink from the spring. However, a shadowy figure emerged from the mist at that moment. Everyone turned around to find that it was the limping Barbossa who had been trailing behind Jack. Both of them instantly drew their swords. However, since Blackbeard was not at sea, the sword of Triton in his hand lost its magic. He had to compete with Barbossa purely on muscular strength. In the ensuing chaos, Philip escaped and untied the ropes binding Serena. Serena, too, had fallen head over heels for Philip and presented him with a kiss that would allow him to survive underwater. Thus, a love story that transcended species unfolded, and the couple disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, the battle at the temple escalated. However, Barbossa, with his lame leg, quickly found himself at a disadvantage. Just as Blackbeard was about to declare victory, the Spanish Armada seized this opportunity to launch a surprise attack and surrounded everyone. They saw the fountain as a blasphemy against the god and did not hesitate to throw the Grail into the water, ordering their crew to destroy the fountain. Blackbeard, seeking to negotiate with the Spaniards, was ambushed by Barbossa. His sword was smeared with a deadly poison that was undeniably lethal. Even though Barbossa's tactics were underhanded, his victory is undeniable. Worried about her father, Angelica rushed forward to check and got cut by the poison-tipped sword. Now that things went bad, Barbossa seized Blackbeard's Sword of Triton, proclaiming himself the new captain of the Queen Anne's Revenge. Seeing Blackbeard's impending doom, the other crew members immediately pledged their loyalty to Barbossa. The Spaniards left the scene, satisfied that the fountain had been destroyed. Now, only Jack and the father-daughter duo, both poisoned, were left in the temple. Jack quickly picked up the Grail. Seeing that the fountain had not dried up completely, he filled up 2 cups and added a mermaid's tear into one of them, but only one of the father-daughter duo could survive. Unexpectedly, Blackbeard raised his cup and drained the spring water, utterly disregarding his daughter's life. However, Jack had anticipated this outcome, so he deceived Blackbeard. In fact, the cup that Blackbeard drank from was the one without the mermaid's tears. Blackbeard immediately cursed out, but it was too late. One could only watch as the stream of water enveloped him. Angelica's wounds speedily healed, following which the water from the spring surged, instantly stripping the flesh from Blackbeard's body. Barbossa successfully became the captain of the Queen Anne's Revenge. With the draw of the Sword of Triton, he too began his own new journey. Meanwhile, Jack emerged as the biggest winner. Gibbs had used the compass to steal all of Blackbeard's treasures, amongst which was the Black Pearl. Jack suddenly became the wealthiest pirate in the Caribbean. In a blink of an eye, 10 years passed. As per their agreement, Will returned, and by now, the love child he shared with Elizabeth was already 9 years old. Regrettably, the joyous time shared by the family of 3 lasted only a day, after which Will reluctantly sailed back to the sea. Unable to bear the absence of a father any longer, 12-year-old Henry decided to help his father break free from the curse. He frantically researched all the curses of the ocean and finally discovered a method to save his father. By calculating the day of his father's return, he set sail into the ocean depths, aided by the light of the lighthouse, then tied a huge stone to his ankle. He heaved the stone into the deep sea and made the extreme decision to jump in, taking a deep breath just before doing so. Even though this method was extremely dangerous, he knew it was the only way to see his father. Just when he was running out of oxygen, a ship appeared from the depths. Catching Henry, the Flying Dutchman swiftly surfaced and appeared with a deafening sound. Footsteps echoed from the deck and a shocked Will saw his own son. He quickly drew his sword, cut the rope binding Henry, and urged him to leave as the Flying Dutchman could only carry lost souls. However, Henry stated that he found a way to help his father. By obtaining Poseidon's trident, they could break all curses. Moreover, Uncle Jack would also lend a hand. On hearing Jack's name, Will immediately warned his son to steer clear of him, as one would definitely become a pirate if they got involved with Jack. At that moment, a new soul appeared and the Dutchman began to submerge. Will had to return to the depths again. As they parted, Will handed Henry a necklace, urging him not to become a pirate because of him. However, Henry was determined to save his father. 9 years passed in the blink of an eye. Henry joined the Royal Navy in hopes of finding clues about the trident in the vast sea. One day, they were ordered to capture escaping pirates, and Henry observed the situation from the cabin. Soon after, he realized that the pirate ship was rapidly fleeing towards the nearby Devil's Triangle. So, he hurriedly ran to the deck and advised the captain to stop the pursuit, because of the legend that any ship entering the triangle never returns. But the captain did not believe in such old tales. Seeing the captain ignoring his advice, Henry tried to control the ship's helm to change its course, but was eventually restrained by the Royal Navy. The captain then tore off his sleeve, locked him in a cell, and labeled him as a deserter. By then, the Royal Navy had already entered the Devil's Triangle. As the fog enveloped everything, the last bit of light also disappeared. Then, the eerie sound of chains echoed as if something was awakening. The crew looked down to find only remnants and one flag from the pirate ship they had been chasing. At the moment, a ghost ship emerged from the fog, and the sound of galloping could be heard on the sea's surface. A group of spectral figures rode the waves and quickly boarded the Royal Navy ship. The captain immediately ordered to open fire, but it was too late. Shadows of the dead flailed their weapons on the ship, and the Devil's Triangle was quickly surrounded by screams. A ghastly captain disembarked from the fog-shrouded ghost ship, his hair floating eerily in the air as blood constantly oozed from his mouth, his body transcending the prison bars. Facing the trembling boy, he asked whether he knew Captain Jack. The boy, seeing the Spectre's crew dismembered, did not dare lie, and admitted he had been looking for Jack. The man, named Salazar, was once a renowned Spanish naval officer who delighted in slaughtering pirates at sea, countless of whom had met their end at his hands. Despite retaliative attempts by pirate alliances, Salazar had the upper hand with his powerful ship, the Silent Mary. However, just as he was on the verge of victory, a young pirate appeared. The young pirate came to the aid of his dying captain, taking from his hand a compass, symbolic of the captain's status, with his crew awaiting his command. The young pirate knew that he was no match for Salazar, and instead used a tactic to defeat him.
You surrender to me now, and I'll let you live!
Then, he led Salazar into the Devil's Triangle. It was said that the Devil's Triangle was a place where the gods imprison evil spirits. The young pirate had the crew fasten the ship's line to a nearby reef rock. His ship made a sharp 180-degree turn. Not until then did Salazar realize that he'd been fooled. However, it was too late for him to turn back. Under the contemptuous eyes of the young pirate, he drove his ship straight into the Devil's Triangle. As soon as the ship entered the triangle, it was pierced by a reef, causing the ammunition cabin to explode and the entire ship to be annihilated instantly. From this singular battle, the young pirate's name echoes across the seas, becoming a renowned captain. Meanwhile, Salazar and his crew were cursed by the Triangle, unable to reincarnate, trapped there forever. Their only companionship is pain. Only when Jack willingly abandons his compass can they ever leave the Triangle. Salazar wanted Henry to tell Jack that he would make him pay in blood for what he had done. However, as soon as Henry returned to the Royal Harbor, the officer learned from his worn-out sleeve that he was a deserter. Even though Henry continuously muttered about Poseidon's trident in his unconscious state, the officer believed it was merely an excuse Henry made up to escape, and consequently ordered him to be shot as a deserter. Just then, a girl stepped forward, asking why he was seeking the legendary artifact. Henry told her that the trident could break all curses and he wanted to use the trident to save his trapped father. Upon hearing this, the girl became interested, as she had been an orphan since childhood. She only had a book of astronomy notes left by her father when she was born. Thus, when she grew up, she became an astronomer. Although in the 17th century Europe, women studying astronomy were considered witches. Therefore, like Henry, she too was a fugitive. She wanted to find the trident to reunite with her biological father, so they decided to search for the trident together. However, the guards spotted the girl. She handed Henry a key, asking him to find a ship to take her away after he escaped, trading her own capture for time for Henry to escape. Having nothing left, Henry had to seek help from Jack, but Jack was down on his luck. He had painstakingly planned a bank robbery, but at the crucial moment, he got drunk. Although Gibbs made a significant effort to carry off the bank successfully, they didn't close the vault door during the escape, causing all the gold coins to spill on the road. Despite everyone successfully escaping pursuit, they only managed to grab one gold coin. However, Jack, adhering to the principle of no empty-handed thief, pocketed it. The crew, empty-handed and grumbling, had been living off the sale of Blackbeard's collection over the years. Although Jack's black pearl was still in the bottle, Arbassa never agreed to help Jack retrieve the black pearl. Moreover, Arbassa had made a name for himself. With Blackbeard's Sword of Triton, he established his own troop. He had treasures weighing several tons on every ship. His prosthetic leg was even encrusted with jewels. Jack's crew, tired of living in poverty, one by one left him to join Barbassa. Even Gibbs had no choice but to leave him for a living. Jack, with a disgruntled face, took out his compass, which pointed directly towards his beloved sea. But he was like the black pearl in the glass bottle, tied to the spot by invisible chains. Jack, hopeless and self-indulgent, came to the tavern to drown his sorrows. The only thing of value to him now was the compass that had once boosted his fame. Thinking that with his ill luck, he may never sail the seas again in this lifetime, he traded his compass for a bottle of rum. However, before he could take 2 sips, he was caught by the guard and thrown into jail. Even worse, when he intentionally discarded the compass, it released the seal imprisoning Salazar. Subsequently, the merry ship, under the watchful eyes of the crew, left the Devil's Triangle. Their sole aim was to eliminate Jack. Vengeance. On the other side, Karina, who was also captured, using the moonlight, discovered more clues from the ruby on her diary. Following the direction of the 5 scopuli stars, they could locate the island where the trident is hidden. Meanwhile, Henry, disguised as a guard, found Jack, who was in captivity. He asked Jack to help him find the trident, so they could save his father, but Jack showed no interest because he had obtained the trident when he was just 18 years old, resulting in him becoming the king of mermaids. Back then, Jack found women uninteresting, so he took off the gem on the trident, which broke the curse preventing mermaids from emerging above water. He deemed the trident not trying and left it behind, but when Henry mentioned Salazar, the butcher of the sea, Jack's face went pale. Seeing him, breaking into a cold sweat, leaves Henry to tell him that Karina, imprisoned in the adjacent cell, could locate the island where the trident is hidden. By working together, they could find the trident and obliterate Salazar. Jack could also make a comeback, piquing Jack's interest. He readily agreed with Henry. The next day, Jack was taken from his cell to be executed. Surprisingly, he met his uncle there, because Salazar roamed the sea, so his uncle voluntarily hid in a cell. He told Jack that he was a close friend of the executioner and could spare Jack a couple of slaps if Jack mentions his name. Following this, Jack was taken to the chopping block while Karina awaited the cold noose. As the officer ordered the execution, Henry seized the prepared rope and jumped down, disrupting the fatal process. Unexpectedly, after Henry had taken a detour, he found himself rolling across the ground. 2 guards quickly grabbed him and wildly hammered him. Unbeknownst to them, Henry was merely a diversion. The pirates in the back were the main force. Alongside the firing cannonball, the chopping block collapsed. After a few close shaves with death, Jack escaped, thanks to the poor quality of the chopping block. With the continuous firing of cannonballs at the Navy, Karina was saved by the pirate, Derek. It was then Jack realized that it was Henry who had stolen 10 silver coins and hired Gibbs and the others to come back. Finally, under the aggressive attack of all the pirates, they managed to escape the Royal Harbor. Right after, upon Jack's command, they embarked on the Seagull, which they had stolen. Setting off for the Trident, the news quickly reached Barbassa's ship. He enjoyed high-quality life, indulging in treasures every day. Upon learning that the sea butcher Salazar had attacked his fleet, Barbassa was visibly frightened. Therefore, he visited the secret prison at the Royal Harbor that night, meeting the witch who was trapped inside. Barbassa had saved the witch from imprisonment years ago, having paid a hefty amount, and arranged her in the prison exclusively for his purposes. Upon Barbassa's request, the witch cursed Jack, bringing him endless bad luck, causing Jack's misfortunes, but this indirectly led Jack to discard his compass, setting Salazar free from the Devil's Triangle. Luckily, Salazar was only seeking revenge on Jack. As long as Barbassa stays away from the sea, he could stay alive. But for Barbassa, giving up the sea and abandoning accumulated treasures was more painful than death. Knowing that Barbassa wouldn't do it, the wizard presented Jack's discarded compass and told him that as long as he helped Salazar find Jack, he could keep his treasures. The next day, Barbassa tracked down Sea Butcher Salazar using the compass. Salazar, with Silent Mary's mouth wide open, was ready to swallow them. Barbassa quickly cried out that he could help find Jack. Only then did Silent Mary stop. Then, a host of spectral figures boarded Barbassa's Queen Anne's Revenge. The Revenge immediately began to slaughter the sailors on board. Although the ghost figures were cursed and would turn to ashes once they set foot on land, they were invincible at sea. The crew tried to resist, but ordinary pistols couldn't hurt them at all. Even though Barbassa wielded the Sword of Triton, it couldn't defeat Salazar. To keep his accumulated wealth, he had to betray Jack and ally himself with Salazar. Salazar asked him what benefit he could bring. Barbassa said that if he spared his crew and treasures, he would take Salazar to Jack. Desperate for revenge, Salazar agreed to Barbassa's request. Later, Barbassa found Jack with the help of the compass. Gibbs spotted Salazar, speeding towards them. Clearly, they were no match for the spectral figures. Under the strong demand of the crew, Jack was forced to take a lifeboat to divert Salazar. Salazar, knowing that Jack was trying to escape to land, arranged for his men to get the dried shark. On several ghostly figures' combined efforts, a few dried sharks were thrown into the sea. After a while, the dried sharks surprisingly opened their eyes. They dragged their broken bodies and charged at Jack's dinghy, following up by launching an attack out of the water. They even attacked the battered dinghy. Seeing the 3 sharks circling the dinghy, Henry had to grab the paddle and hit the shark's head, driving them away. Meanwhile, another shark leaped out of the water and started to tear at their heads. With the splash of the shark into the water, Salazar knew Jack was stranded. Leading the spectral figures straight towards them, they walked across the waves as if it was flat ground. Seeing this, Henry quickly took off his clothes and threw them into the water to distract the shark while he dived into the water to escape. Jack had intended to follow closely, but one of his legs got stuck in the boat. Seeing Salazar approaching, Jack grabbed the boat's anchor and hooked it onto the shark's face. Out of desperation, unexpectedly, the shark swam towards Henry. Jack, seeing Salazar swinging his blade, used the pull from the shark to escape and then pulled on the rope to rescue Henry, who was under attack from the shark. Afterwards, both of them, helped by the tug from the shark, successfully landed on Sandy Island. The dark, spectral figures followed them to the shore. Seeing Jack cornered, Salazar intended to finish him off. However, one of the spectral figures vanished into smoke as it touched the land. This made Jack realize that they could not leave seawater, so they all fled towards the interior of Sandy Island without looking back. Upon reaching the forest, however, they stepped into a trap and were hoisted off the ground. It turned out that Jack also had a past could conflict with the Lord of Sandy Island. Their fates certainly didn't look promising. Meanwhile, Salazar was killing off the crew in his wrath. Seeing that his crew was diminishing, Barbossa proposed to Salazar to land on the island himself and bring Jack back. When Jack woke up from unconsciousness, he found himself at a wedding scene. The island lord explained that although Jack had stolen his dying seagull ship years ago, he had forgiven Jack. Not only that, but he also intended to marry his beautiful sister to Jack. Although Jack stated that he did not deserve her, he was threatened by the island lord and ended up having the wedding. Then, a gunshot sounded. To everyone's surprise, it was a well-dressed Barbossa making an entrance. Still, he did not plan to bring Jack back. He guessed that Jack would find the trident, with Henry's help, and defeat Salazar. By then, he would be able to rule again with the help of the Sword of Triton. Drawing this sword, he stabbed it into the black pearl, sealed in a bottle. As if summoned, the black pearl fell to the ground and began growing bigger and bigger. Particularly, the moment it touched seawater, the black pearl instantly regained its original appearance. But before Jack could rejoice, he found a golden revolver pointed at his head.
Only one, Captain.
At the same time, the Royal Navy also got a clue and set off in search of the trident. Upon the realization, Gibbs immediately started trembling. He lied that Jack had appointed him captain before disembarking. Soon, everyone was locked in the ship's cells. Gibbs stated that if they had something sharp, he could pick the lock and escape. At this point, the second officer's toenail caught his attention. With the help of the toenail, everyone managed to escape the royal warship. By then, Barbossa noticed the royal warship was closing in on the Black Pearl. To face the upcoming war, he handed over the helm to Karina, hoping she could locate the trident through celestial navigation. Soon after, Barbossa was shocked to discover that Karina had an astronomy book. He asked her where did she get it. Karina explained that she was born in an orphanage. The book was the only thing her father left her. Although she had never seen her father, she believed him to be a sophisticated astronomer. Upon hearing this, Barbossa realized that the girl before him was his own daughter. Years ago, knowing his daughter couldn't live a pirate's life, he left her a stolen book, hoping that she could have a good life with the ruby in the book. He didn't expect his daughter to take the book's contents as her belief and set off to find the trident. He incredulously opened the compass in his hand, the pointer directed to none other than Karina. Just then, a flash of fire lit up. Turning around, everyone saw that Salazar had appeared not far away and effortlessly defeated the royal warship. Before Barbossa could order an escape, Salazar drove the Silent Mary and rammed into them. Swiftly following this, a violent attack started on both sides. As the two ships closed in, the statue on the prow of the Silent Mary surprisingly came to life. The statue raised its spear and ferociously thrust at Jack. Jack dodged the attack with his nimble body, dispelling the imminent crisis. By now, the sailors on the deck were losing, and even the battle-hardened Barbossa was injured in the fight. In this moment of crisis, Karina finally located the island harboring the trident using the constellation 5 pecks of rice. As the Black Pearl rushed onto the island, the spectral figures not touching seawater immediately turned to ash. Not wasting time, Salazar captured Henry as a bargaining chip against Jack. Seeing Henry being taken away, Karina was highly concerned. Now, only finding the trident can save Henry. At this moment, sunrise illuminated the entire island with orange light. Everyone saw a sea of sparkling gems covering the whole island. Looking down, it resembled the vast and boundless universe. Then, Karina followed the clues from her astronomy book and opened Poseidon's tomb. Suddenly, a ruby burst out with a golden glow. forming the constellation of 5 pecks of rice. Deep within the sea, the trident was stimulated and unleashed an invisible force, instantly creating a fissure on the sea surface. Caught off guard, Karina and Jack slipped into the trench. After picking up the fallen astronomy book, Jack realized that this place was Poseidon's tomb. Following this, both of them started searching for the trident within the trench. Meanwhile, Salazar, in his eagerness to reach land and kill Jack, decided to inhabit Henry's body, although only the trident could restore him to his original form. For the sake of revenge, he chose to take the risk. Now, Jack had found the trident, but before he could reach the treasure, Henry, controlled by Salazar, rushed forward with a blade. Due to his failing strength, Jack quickly fell into a disadvantage. Karina understood that they could defeat Salazar if they could get hold of the trident. Unfortunately, the trident was impossible to pull out. She could only muster all her strength and kick the trident out. Trying to pick the trident back up, she was still a beat too slow. Karina, a frail woman without Salazar's strength, was thrown several meters away by the force of the trident. Salazar, now with the trident, was instantly free from the confines of his body. Without needing Henry's body, he could now stand on land in spite of the curse. Waving the trident, it released a sphere of water that enveloped Jack. Directed by Salazar, Jack traveled between sea and land continuously. Each suffocating spell was a near-death experience. By this time, Henry had regained consciousness from Karina's shaking. His time as a phantom had brought him to the brink of life and death. He suddenly realized that in order to break the curse, they had to break the trident. Only then would all the magical powers disappear. At this moment, Salazar seized the opportunity to thrust the trident into Jack's chest. Just when Salazar thought he had one, Jack's astronomy book in his chest saved his life. Just then, Henry drew his sword and cut the trident with all his might. With a mysterious power disappearing, the water instantly became clear. The traces of the curse faded from Salazar's face. The phantom soldiers all returned to normal, and their bodies, untouched by air for decades, began craving it again. However, before they could rejoice about this, the trench began to shrink. If they could not reach the shore before the trench closes, they would become the accompanying treasures of Poseidon's burial. At this moment, Barbossa, worried about his daughter's safety, used the ship's anchor to rescue everyone. Above the water, Gibbs steered the ship while incessantly reminding the three to quickly climb up the anchor. Everyone, understanding this to be their last straw, hastened to grip the chain and climb upwards. The slower sailors were left behind to accompany the burial, including most of Salazar's crew. On the deck, seeing that the three had climbed onto the chain, Gibbs immediately ordered his men to retrieve the anchor. However, at this moment, the chain hit a large stone in the trench, causing the winch that hoisted the anchor to snap. The chain of the anchor started to slide into the deep sea. As the sailors on the deck managed to stabilize the anchor, Karina was thrown down due to the massive inertia. At the crucial moment, Barbossa reached out and caught her, saving her life. However, she then noticed the 5 pecks of rice tattoo on Barbossa's arm and realized that the old man before her was her father. Just as Salazar, with his sword ready, was getting closer and closer to them, Jack at the top of the chain quickly threw a sword to Barbossa. Upon receiving the sword, Barbossa, without thinking, leapt down. He knew that the slightest mistake could cost his daughter's life. Salazar fell from the chain, and, simultaneously, Barbossa risked his life to save his daughter from danger. At this point, the legendary pirate king of the Caribbean, Barbossa, died adventurously without regret. As the trench healed completely, Jack and the others safely landed with the help of the anchor. Though they could no longer see the cunning yet witty Captain Barbossa, Henry handed Karina her astronomy book, comforting her distressed soul. Even though Barbossa was not the sophisticated astronomer she imagined, when Karina realized her relationship with him, she felt as if she had the whole world. The other sailors took off their hats one after another to offer their highest respect to Barbossa. After a series of adventures, the son of Will and the daughter of Barbossa ended up together. Due to the lifting of the curse, Will resurfaced and shared a heartfelt embrace with Elizabeth. From now on, they don't have to suffer the solitude of the 10-year agreement. Instead, they can spend joyous times like ordinary people, watching the happy family through his telescope. Jack couldn't help but feel a mix of envy and jealousy. However, he had his own story, that of the grand and mysterious ocean blue. With all the curses in the vast sea broken, some trapped souls were also freed. He quietly entered the couple's room while they were deep in sleep. Will woke up in fright but found nothing in the room. Without giving it much thought and hugging his wife, he fell back asleep. However, a few barnacles quietly laid on the ground.